hi, pile number two. So I am here with the beautiful little. Ooh, let's see if we can get to focus. There we go. The beautiful little Larimar tumble. So let's move that. So we have some significator cards, and pile one actually got a little bit emotional for me because it was so sweet. So I have now big big hopes for the rest of these piles. So the significator cards are just like the overall vibes for your whole year. So they're going to be like themes or reoccurring uh, feelings, experiences, energies, that kind of a thing. So we have the Seven of Swords. We also have a couple of like just general advice. So we have the Beaver, which encourages you to lay a solid foundation. We'll leave that there. And we also have the butterfly, which is telling you, or reminding you rather, that transformation is beautiful. And then lastly, what we have here is the dragon prayer, which no, does not mean you have to start going to church if you don't already do that. But what it does mean is that you have a couple of overlapping themes here. Now, the energy here is, I'm going to use the word interesting to start. I think there's a couple different scenarios, and it'll be up to you to discern whether or not either of these scenarios are you. But the reason you're lumped together is one, because this is a general reading, and two, because the advice, regardless of what overarching theme I'm picking up here is, the advice will apply to each group that this overarching theme is outlining. There's some conflicting ideas I'm getting a hold of, and that's what makes me think there's multiple groups here. I'm feeling almost hesitant to tell you what's going on, which means to me that some of you are opposed to hearing this. If that's you, it's not healthy for you to hear right now, you're not ready to hear it, or it just straight up, it's not you and it doesn't resonate, I encourage you to pick another pile, because this isn't the tarot card reading where I tell you everything's fine, you're going to win the lottery, all your dreams are going to come true, everything's going to be easy and hunky-dory. I feel like that can be very disingenuous and in some ways dangerous and make people distrust this craft and spirit and other things that are ethereal or metaphysical in general. So I'm going to try my best to give it to you straight, because I think the only bad news, really, on a spiritual level, is the bad news that you don't hear or you hide from because you can't grow from it. And that's the only way it has power over you, is when you decide that you can't work through it and you need to avoid it or deny it. What I'm hearing for some of you is there's going to be a lot of shadow work. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about your shadow, or what people call your shadow. And I wish this channel wasn't so young as this video comes out to date, because I believe that there are so many fantastic things your shadow can teach you and is here to teach you. And it's another side of yourself. It's as much yourself as you are, and shaming it is just as hurtful and damaging and stunting to yourself as shaming the rest of you is. Now, because people are multifaceted and you have many levels, your shadow does talk to you. And I feel like for whatever reason, through denial or ignorance or inability to hear it, or life being too noisy for you to understand what's been going on. Because as humans, you know, it's like we have a radio tuned to the right frequency, but it's like storming outside. So it can be hard to hear, or we don't get it. Um, and it's like hearing all the words backward in Morse code sometimes, where it's like we hear it, but like we straight up can't understand the messages. But what I'm really hearing is that for some of you, you're denying your shadow self. because you're scared of it or you don't want it to be a part of you. You're ashamed of it, and so you're not accepting it. And for others of you, I'm hearing your shadow self's been trying to talk to you for a long time, and you're just not able to hear it for some reason. And either way, that's causing a slight disconnect. It's not harmful or damaging or anything that can't be worked on as long as you're willing to work on it, but it's an excellent groundwork for you to learn and grow from this. And because this has been happening for a little bit longer than your shadow self would like, it means that if you do accept this message and learn from it, you're going to slingshot so hard in the direction that you want to go. And it's going to be a very like profound experience for you as a human being. And when you come out on the other side of this learning experience or journey, you're going to be so proud of yourself. And your shadow wants you to know that regardless of your intentions, if you've been ignoring it or otherwise, it is very proud of you, and it always will be, because it's a higher frequency part of yourself. So it's not like your human ego or your mammalian brain. It's a part of you operating on a higher frequency that understands what unconditional love is, and it holds that for you even if it's not always reciprocated by your human form. So when we talk about, like as above so below, the shadow can sometimes, if we're talking about the spiritual, like the more or less white above and the black below, usually the shadow can be associated with the black below. But what people don't think about is that there isn't necessarily always an up and down that is consistent. So sometimes the black below is actually above the the like so above or the light aspect of you. And if you deny or erase one of those aspects, you won't have the other. There's no light without dark, there's no dark without light. It would all just be one thing. Um, and I think one of the best examples I give for why we need both to appreciate both is your eyes in your actual pupil. They are very dark and devoid of light. That's why they're black, of course. I don't mean to sound condescending here, but because they are very devoid of light, when light hits your eye and goes through to the back where you have your light receptors, that's why you can see the light and appreciate the beauty that comes from the physical world as we physically see it. In the same way, we're not able to appreciate the beauty of night if the light of day wasn't so bright and at times grueling and oppressive. And so the first thing your shadow wants to get across is that it's here to help you even if you view it as a detriment, and it will never try purposely to digress you or diminish you. And in a lot of ways, for some of you, I believe that those are instead misplaced frustrations that your ego has as a human, or there's some subconscious conditioning that happened because you had a traumatic life or traumas within your life, and those have now been um, pushed onto your shadow. And you don't have to believe in like shadow and spiritual work to understand all of this, because on a subconscious level you will talk to your higher self and associate certain parts of you. And like sometimes that can you can see parts of that reflected in your dreams, but not always. And I absolutely love talking to people's shadows. Sometimes they are really mean, but sometimes people's light parts are really mean. It's just more common for shadows to be mean. And I think that has a lot to do with what humans decide to associate with shadows. But shadows are cool. They're dark and they're edgy, and they say the things that sometimes you wish you could say but you don't have the courage to say, and They like to have this like almost like puffed out chest, like kind of like sweet ass like mob boss vibe, where it's like they don't have to try to garner respect. People just understand off of like vibes and alone when you're in the back of the room, like that you are going to be respected, and that's the only way that they will not be in trouble or have a problem. Like there's this like you don't wish people were kind to and respected you. They are or they will not be there very long. And I don't mean to like threaten violence, but like shadows have this innate primal like power about them that when you embrace it in a healthy way, humans and people around you will pick up on that in a way that will you'll see it. They'll kind of stutter and they'll find it harder to disrespect you, even if they had in the past. And it can be very empowering and it can put a smile on your face when you start to understand, like I'm an actual beast and like I have all of the badass, like, villain energy without actually being a villain. And that's such a powerful position to put yourself in. Um, it's just, it's very, very cool. And your shadow wishes you all the best in the world, and that one day you'll feel the energy that it has and you'll grow from it, even if you never embrace it, because that is 100% your choice and they're here for you regardless. So, the Seven of Swords talks a lot about being deceitful and being around people that are deceitful. And I feel like you've had frustrations. Some of you, I should say some of you, not all of you, because this is a general reading, but I feel like a lot of you have had frustrations expressed towards the universe or the ethereal or God or anything else. And even if you're not spiritual, this can just manifest in words like the world is so cruel and like why did I get dealt this hand? I think there have been a lot of heavy energies you've been moving through lately about frustrations of life not panning out the way that you want it to. And that turns into what used to be wishes and is now just bitterness of um, a lot of things suck and they're never going to change, and a little bit of lost faith in terms of if you were spiritual, like distrusting that things are going to change for the better. And we all have those moments. The fact that this is a pile in a general reading means you are not alone. And this channel itself um, is here to tell you you're not alone and you never will be unless you want to be. Um, so feel free to comment or email us if you want to talk about any of this too. You know, I'm a small channel. I have time for everybody right now. um, and I love that. And, um, part of this transformation, this beautiful card, is I don't want to call it the silver lining, but it is the path that the shadow recognizes you want to go. And part of transforming yourself, which will inherently be reflected in the physical surroundings you have that you express frustrations with and distrust in, like all of that is going to be an avalanche effect, a total rock slide downhill, unstoppable. That transformation is all going to stem from working on yourself in the ways that you've been afraid to, or you haven't been wanting to admit, or you simply like you didn't know how, or you just didn't hear the signals. Um, and so this is, for some of you, this is just your shadow's way of telling you what your next steps are. And this doesn't have to be traumatic. This doesn't have to be like you wish every aspect of your life would change. You wish your relationships, your finances, your housing situations, your political environments, your family, your careers, all of it would change. This could be as simple and as nebulous as part of you doesn't feel fulfilled in your life choices, even though you have a comfortable life surrounded by loving people and you have no idea why and you feel bad about it and you're kind of mean to and unfair to yourself about it and you sort of shame yourself because you say I should be happy, what the hell's wrong with me? um, and it's not necessarily that you did anything wrong, it's just that you're evolving to the next level, and you're not going to be driven to transform or evolve to the next level if you're content with being where you are. So you inherently have to have some negative feedback, or there's no reason to change. You know, if a caterpillar wasn't better off having wings, it would never go through the very harsh effects of cocooning itself and like growing whole wings, which the growing pains like have to be insane. Um, and so there's part of that dynamic here of maybe some of you are just feeling a little unsatisfied or uncomfortable. And this is a really good opportunity for you to get through that. So I guess the rest of this reading will be breaking down that point and maybe getting some more information on what's going on or how to do it or how to talk to your shadow self or how not to be scared. Um, I do know when I did live near Seattle for a while, I'm not over there anymore. I did have some groups where I knew people who volunteer work wise, they would actually channel people's shadow selves through regressive hypnosis and they would help talk to those individuals and help work through some things. So I do know there are trustworthy people out there who can help you with shadow work. Unfortunately, they have retired and disbanded. So I'm really, I don't have anyone to recommend to you now if you don't feel safe doing this by yourself. But do your due diligence, definitely do research if you want to find someone who's experienced, because unfortunately, it's really easy to fake or over exaggerate how experienced someone is in metaphysical work. So you really do want to do some due diligence and find an expert and not some con man who charges you way too much money. Um, and I wish I could recommend somebody for those of you who want other resources. Um, but at this current point in time, I don't have strong connections. I'm hoping for those of you who view this video later, since it technically is timeless, the channel will grow to the point where I have new connections for you. In the meantime, I recommend finding a place where you can sit down where you feel safe and calm and you can be undistracted. Um, you know, no phone, no social media, no random ding noises, no dogs or kids like jumping on you wanting to play, but just, you know, with yourself and try some other meditation techniques that are very simple. You can Google them, but just like breathing in and out. Some of you may benefit from doing grounding work. Others of you may not. So if you want to ground, you can look up some ways to do that. But what I'm really hearing is that you kind of just want to focus on your head. So bring awareness like to your head. So just focus on how the top of your head, the crown of your head feels. Focus on the spot between your eyes on your forehead and figure out how your third eye feels. And because your shadow wants to talk to you so badly, because it hasn't been able to communicate with you effectively yet, if you're able to quiet yourself enough, you should be able to hear what it has to say. For those of you who you've maybe heard from it and you still can't figure out what the hell it's trying to tell you, we'll pull more cards and try to figure that out for you. Now, I do want to actually read what's from the Beaver Spirit book, because I believe this message, if I paraphrase it, won't come across the way that it needs to for you. So for the beaver, it's does say lay a solid foundation. That's kind of like the takeaway bullet point. But the overall message is that the beaver spirit is here to tell you about a power living within you that is born of spirit and a source from which all life arises. This is the power to establish the sacred connection with the universal consciousness so you can deliberately co create the world you desire and, quite frankly, deserve. You know that it takes work, determination, and sustained effort to co create, okay, emphasis on co create, and lay a solid foundation of your dreams. If, with spirit as your partner, you bring the twigs and branches of your intentions and desires and spread them across the river of time, you'll be amazed at what you can do. You will find that you can even change the direction of the flow of your life. You can ensure that your world will be prosperous and purposeful, filled with both love and joy, and rich with magic and meaning. That which you desire will come to you and remain sustainably and substantially abundant if you build on a sturdy foundation. Keep your intention and energy consistent and deliberate, using all your resources and the energy of this wonderful, productive time. Have faith, for with Spirit to co create with you, your success is assured. Spirit is your partner, helping you along as you change the course of your life in the way your heart desires. So, the beaver spirit has come to warn you to check for rotten wood in the foundations of your dreams. Maybe you made choices that no longer serve you, and maybe some choices were made on hasty feelings of unworthiness and hoping that once you got your desired effects, that everything would change for the better. But you can always get busy and build something fresh or patch up the foundation and replace rotten wood. All manner of miracles can spring up from a new, strong foundation when you remember your partnership with Spirit. Now, I want to be clear here. We are talking about a multifaceted want to talk to you. One from Spirit, which can mean your spirit guides, universe, God, and others, whatever you would like, ancestors. It's going to be different for all of you. But every time I say the word spirit, I am also reminded of your spirit, specifically your shadow side. So, they really just want you to give them a chance, try to hear what they have to say, and that will bring us to moving on to the next section. Right after I wrap up what's going on with the Seven of Swords here, because I brought up deceit for a little bit and I got a little sidetracked. So, what I mean by deceit is that you might feel like not only the universe deceived you and is continuing to deceive you in that you don't feel fulfilled or you have the material things you would like or a comfortable life. And that can be really hard and really unsatisfying. Once again, everyone has been there, so believe me when I tell you, you're not alone. But this can also be a distrust in yourself, especially if you don't trust darker energies or your shadow side, or there have been misconstrued blamings of your shadow's messages being your ego, or vice versa, and that distrust within yourself, or maybe you did get the message and you're diminishing it because you're scared of it or you're ashamed to be associated with it. That can be really hard as well. So, deceit and distrust can be damaging. There's also a chance that perhaps part of this trauma or trauma you have had recently has stemmed from you completing actions that other people who their opinions mattered to you, uh, they felt as though they were deceived and you were the deceiver. And if that is the case, just know that your guides and your shadow themselves understands that you were completing your actions to the best of your ability with the information you were giving, and you did everything with the right intentions. So, people that have the capacity to forgive you and therefore show you kindness and love and are worth taking up space in your life will come to understand that you did not do it out of a place of deceit. You did it from the proper intentions, and forgiveness will be given as long as everyone in the situation is patient. And those who never seem to get over it or never give you the chance to express yourself, they will fall away, and they will fall away for good reason. And blaming yourself or your shadow side um, for taking actions that led to maybe some people falling out of your life that you didn't necessarily feel ready for is something that healing from will allow your life to progress in the way that you wish it would and relieve some frustrations that you have. So this is a little bit of heavy energy, but it's not bad. Like everyone goes through this, and it's, I wouldn't say it's as dramatic as like a Dark Night of the Soul for most of you. It's not necessarily that level of heavy. It's more just your shadow feels a little unheard or rejected, and fixing that will put you back in a really powerful position to kind of like grab life by the horns and really accomplish whatever it is you would love to accomplish at this point in your life, aka 2025. So let's move on because just these cards have been on screen for a very long time. We're just going to put them up here. And we're going to move on to these other cards. So the way that these work is, and I pulled everything without looking at it, so no spoilers. But I have two cards. One is for current energies and feelings, and the other is for where you will evolve to later in 2025. For whatever significant event may be happening for you or after significant events. It doesn't have to be one thing. Um, and so, what's going on here is these two are asking about your personal life. So, relationships that apply to you or energies around you. Um, so, let's look at those first. And then I have another pile here that's talking about where you start and evolve to in 2025 for your career and or goals. And then the last pile I have here is looking at what's going on with you personally. And I have a feeling your personally pile is going to be a little bit more complicated than others because you're having some inner dynamics that are um, way more interesting than what some other people have, and that's a really cool experience to see. So if we need clarifications at any point, I do have tarot cards that we will draw from, and we'll try to see what's going on to the best of my ability. Like, I don't know, so believe me or don't, technically this is all entertainment. So here we go. So first we have the vulture, and we end with at some point you transition to the energy of the fire ant. Now, I told pile one this, but I'm probably going to iterate it in all of these piles. Um, Time is going to be very dependent on you and your own journey, especially since this is a general reading. So I've narrowed it down to 2025, but I can't tell you when. So this could be happening on New Year's. It could be happening on the last day of December, or any time in between. But just know that this will happen exactly when it needs to, not a moment earlier or later. So this is really about personal work, and when you're ready for it, it will happen. So it's not about wanting, it's about progressing to the point where it's safe and beneficial for you to have these in the way you need to continue living your life in the way that's most aligned with your true self. And that's all about coming from a place of love and fulfillment, applied to you. So now for the vulture, uh, which is an air element, and you're transitioning into fire as far as personal relationships go. For those of you who are curious, these are both masculine elemental energies. If that becomes significant, I will mention it. But for right now, it's just like a cool piece of trivia. You're going from air to fire. And for the vulture specifically, Even though they're kind of seen in Western cultures as being associated with death, dark, creepy things, decaying, like kind of gross and nasty. In fairy tales, they're usually cruel and associated with the main bad character or villain, but that's not necessarily what these cards are reading. I do think that the purple and black that you have is some interesting synchronicities, and it may help when you're meditating to try to talk to your shadow if that's something you feel comfortable doing. Um, like the color purple may be something that you'll see, or maybe beneficial to focus on to kind of get your shadow to be tuned to a frequency where it's easier for you to hear what they're saying ultimately. But everyone's different, and some people colors don't necessarily help them with meditation. So take that with a grain of salt. But for the vulture, they really talk about being a guardian, actually. And that's ultimately what your shadow is. It's a very strange guardian. It's kind of like the scary gargoyles you see in old movies where the lightning strikes and someone's too close to one of them, or they see it on the roof and they like scream. Like they're guardians, but they're not inviting, and that's because like they're not supposed to be inviting. They're great at setting boundaries, and they can do a lot of good for you. The problem is that when shadows are channeled through a human brain, and there's a lot of ego and other fuzz that gets wrapped up in it, they can sometimes be nasty. And we don't always have to be nice. Sometimes nastiness is warranted. You know, if someone is constantly being belligerent and like verbally putting you down, sometimes an appropriate thing to say is, I don't need you in my life. And that is fine. And saying no very aggressively can be a good thing. Okay. Okay. So anyway, the vulture is really associated with the energy of being a guardian and a purifier and putting things back into balance. Um, and a lot of times, like we talked about, they are misunderstood because of what they have been associated with over and over again based on their looks and otherwise. They can help with preventing the spread of disease by eating rotting and decaying things, which is usually why they're thought of as being creepy, but they play this essential role that very few other things are comfortable with playing, and that's a lot of what allows them to be misunderstood. And so what I'm hearing is that your shadow feels misunderstood a lot of the time just because they're playing a role that is often villainized, and a lot of that villainization can come from the shadows willing to do some of the dirty work that a lot of the rest of your soul isn't willing to. um, and by dirty work I just mean that in the human simplification dichotomy of good and evil, which inherently we have some work to do on that, but in the dichotomy of good and evil, the shadow is usually taking actions to protect you that can be seen as evil. And when unbalanced, the shadow can be very damaging and very cruel. But the light side of you, when unbalanced, can be just as cruel. So I wanted to emphasize that for you real quick, just so you understand that right now you're starting at a place where you're working on balancing yourself. That's a lot of what this is talking about. And you're also in these energies of trying to guard yourself and make sure you're protected and healthy. But there's a little bit of dissatisfaction because you feel like even though you're trying to protect yourself in whatever way, it's not working. And that's because what you're trying to protect yourself from is a part of yourself that you don't necessarily understand how to deal with or hasn't been dealt with properly, probably from a little bit of misunderstandings for a lot of you. Now, that doesn't include all of you, and so for those of you where that doesn't apply, there could be issues of you don't feel necessarily you're dissatisfied because you're denying a part of yourself or you're scared of your shadow. But perhaps what's going on here is It's just time for some maintenance and upkeep, and it's time, as the beaver said, to look for rotten wood and get rid of some of it, patch up your foundation, keep on building. And so for some of you, this is just like, again, it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can just be a little bit of growing pains of, yeah, last year or last day or last second or last minute, whatever it is. You felt fine, but now you're ready for a next big transformation. And so there's a little bit of work that goes with that so that as your ideals and values, wants, aspirations, needs change, you recognize what those are and you take the appropriate steps. And all of that is healthy. So that's fantastic, you know, and that's why like our aspirations can change when we're younger to being older, and you know that's a complicated because there's external influences too. But for people who've done a lot of spiritual work, I think they'll understand where I'm coming from. And I hope that doesn't sound condescending either. It's just it's one of those things where the more spiritual work you do, the more you kind of you understand when you're ready for a next phase or a next cycle, or you're just entering one you didn't know you were going to. So the energy that you'll eventually transition into as far as personal relationships go, so relationships with your shadow and other people, aside from guarding from maybe other damaging people and you trying to guard from a piece of yourself, or your shadow trying to guard you from other people and it feels stunted because it's not as powerful as it would be if you were able to hear it or were comfortable accepting it for what it is. um, and that is the fire ant energy here of transition, is that of kind of like rigid thinking. It's a lot about order and being able to have plans and execute them. It's about being aggressive when necessary, and it's about being actually thoughtful and disciplined. So it's not aggression and destruction for aggression and destruction's sake. It's about understanding when to employ the means that it needs to protect itself and give itself the love and safety and results that it requires. So, for example, like a lot of people will tell you, um, you know, a knife is only dangerous in the hands of someone with ill intentions. Like if it's just sitting on the counter, it really is just a knife. Um, and so it can be the most useful tool and it can be the most dangerous, devastating tool. And that's kind of where anger comes from. And I think largely what the shadow is trying to get across to you, and what maybe you've had some internal struggles with, consciously or otherwise, for a lot of you, is the misconception that if you accept your shadow for what it is and being a part of you, you will lose who you are to your shadow, and your shadow will take over and you'll do damaging and hurtful things that you otherwise wouldn't want to do. And inherently, I think that there's a lot of flaws with that, and you're really not giving yourself enough credit. So, your shadow being a part of you means that it will only overpower the rest of you if you inherently accept that and let it. Um, which I suppose the reasons behind doing that would be a different discussion altogether. But the fact that you're worried about if it would do that for some of you means that you're self aware enough to understand that you choose to not let your shadow take over. And that means that regardless of how much you talk to your shadow, it won't have the power to do that. There are quite a few individuals in the world and otherwise who, even if they told their shadow, like, full reins, do what you want, their shadow wouldn't go on a murder spree of epic proportions, um, or exploit like chemical warfare or hurt all their friends' feelings and they would have no one, or withhold food from their children. Like, shadows are associated with so many damaging things. And the important thing to understand is that you are both light and shadow, and just because you have dark thoughts doesn't mean you are those dark thoughts. And just because you have wants that can be damaging to other people doesn't mean that you are going to act on them and damage other people. What they're really symbolizing when they're filtered through something as primal and rudimentary as your human brain is other parts of you are trying to tell you what they would like to do, and it comes out a little bit distorted and limited in terms of the human brain. So I'm being called to give you an example of how, like, sometimes when someone is really picking on you, like, let's say you have like a pretty aggressive bully in middle school or high school, you might have the urge on multiple occasions to like stand up and just deck them, like right across the face, just cold cut them in the jaw, and, ugh, and then they're on the floor, right? And you would feel so much better. And you might like daydream about that while they're like yelling obscenities at you, and other kids are laughing and doing nothing to support you, like that frustration right there, and that translation of I'm gonna just beat them up and then they'll shut up. Um, that's more of a shadow driven impulse. And it's coming out of acts of love towards yourself, but its ramifications are not necessarily seen as love towards other people for obvious reasons. It's very hard to argue that decking somebody is an act of love that is not detrimental to them. However, your shadow isn't necessarily worried about hugging the guy that is trying to attack you, or like the bear that's trying to eat you. Your shadow is more about, I'm going to take care of myself first, and I'm very powerful, and I have the means to do that, and I have the right to do that, even if somebody else doesn't like it. Um, and that's important. That is the driving force behind no means no, and it's a complete sentence. Um, but because we have primal human brains, sometimes when your shadow says just do something, like do something powerful to get them to leave us alone so that we can be in a state of peace and love, because they don't deserve to disrupt that. No one has that right, which is true. um it comes out very cruel when your brain says, okay, how can we do that? And the only option it comes up with is deck them. Just beat them up. Like when your logistics and your mammalian brain and your like physical limitations kick in, and that's the only thing you can think of, your shadow gets blamed for being very cruel, because it says if that's our only option, do it. Um, because we should be protecting ourselves. No one else should make us feel this bad and this disempowered. And I deserve to take up space, and I'm going to. That's what a lot of this is your shadow recognizes that you're in some position where you're not in a position where you can extend your kindness to others. You have to instead protect yourself and get back into a balanced point of love and serenity. And then later, when you have that, the light part of yourself can say, let's extend that kindness to others. And your shadow will agree more or less by kind of saying, like, yeah, we have the capacity to do that, it's not going to like detriment me, so like, you can take the reins on this one, and I'll let you know when we need to start telling people no. It's a very like yin yang relationship. And the beautiful part about you being who you are and having both of these inputs of your light half and your shadow half, although half is probably the wrong word, is that you are neither of them, but you contain both of them and you get inputs from both of them, because you are a multifaceted being and you are more powerful than both of them. And so you're not defined by your shadow and you're not defined by your light side. You are the product of what you choose to believe and talk and act on. And so allowing your shadow the space to give you its information and its opinions is kind of like hearing from an advisor. They're just that. They're an advisor. So like they can say like, "Hey, I think you should punch them in the face. They suck." And your light side can say like, "They suck, but like I don't think we should punch them. We should just like plug our ears and start screaming or something, or like we should use this opportunity as a reminder that like we should go bond with other people once we're done getting picked on, you know? Um, and what ends up happening is you make the decision. And that is what defines who you are. And being scared of your shadow is giving it more credit and more power than it should have, and frankly, that it deserves. And that's when a shadow can get out of balance, and that's when people can get scary. So, know that you are in control. You are you for a reason. Your shadow is a part of you for a reason. It is not the whole. It will never be the sum of the whole unless you want it to be. And that is your choice. So, hearing what it has to say in no way defines who you choose to be and who you are. So, as far as relationships go, you're guarding yourself from your shadow and probably some other people, or you're trying to guard other people from your shadow in either way that's causing tension within you. But later this year, you're not going to have that tension. You're going to be in a position where you can have wonderful interactions with other people and different parts of yourself. And you're going to have all of this inner strength, inner discipline, inner understanding of what you want to act on and what you don't. And you're going to take what you want and you're going to just simply leave the rest. And so when your light side says, hey, let's do this, and your dark side says, hey, let's do this, and your other sides that aren't light or shadow say, hey, let's do this, you know, and your mammalian brain says, hey, let's do this, and your friends say, hey, let's do this, you can take all of that and make your own decision. So it sounds really complicated, but ultimately it's not. There's just some dialogue you've been denying and some part of yourself you've been denying or rejecting or ignoring or just simply not hearing, and clearing that up will help you feel a lot better and function. This is going to sound very cold, but function more efficiently, in that it'll exhaust you less and you'll be able to accomplish more of whatever it is that you wish you could, and that will cause big changes in your life. um, and it may actually, for certain people out there, for certain individuals, certain of yous, um, it may help people actually see you as a more trustworthy character, because it's possible that the inner strife you have now makes you come across as a little bit like inauthentic or not willing to share a lot about what you're going through inner turmoil wise, and that might get translated into they're being weird and they won't tell me everything, they're being really sketchy, sometimes they do stuff I don't understand and it's frustrating, and it makes me think that I can't do stuff with them because they're unpredictable. So that's not everybody, but just, you know, if it resonates, it resonates. All right, I'm gonna leave it at that. So we're gonna talk about not personal relationships for a minute, but your careers and or goals, because we don't discriminate against people who only work and we don't discriminate against people who don't work. So unlike everybody else, you're very lucky. You got 3 cards and you were only supposed to have 2, so don't tell the other piles unless you came from other pile, in which case hi. um, but we have the swan, we have the zebra, and we have the peacock. So we have some interesting energies here. Now, the way that I'm interpreting this is you're going to start as the swan regardless. Interestingly, swan here. Okay, water element. The zebra's fire again, and then the peacock is air. So far, what we're missing here in this dialogue of looking at how your relationships and careers are being impacted is there kind of isn't a lot of grounding. So maybe that grounding work I mentioned earlier will help you like sort through some of this and balance yourself out. But it doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, you suck at that, or you're not grounded or you're not balanced. It's just like for some of you that this may be a sign. Now, the swan here, interestingly enough, is a symbol of effortless creativity. The reason it's like that is because this effortless creativity really stems from being sensitive to your spiritual sides and the input they get from that. Um, the problem is that the swan is also a call. I shouldn't say problem, but the call for this pile, little pile two members, um, is that there is a call to look within and spend some time with yourself. Now you can see there's a reflection here, as the swan is implied to be riding along water. So we have like an as above and a so below. There's a dichotomy of self between light and shadow. There's also the dichotomy of physical manifestations of what you do versus your spiritual self and how those are reflections. So if you change one, the other will in turn adapt regardless of if it takes time. All of this is really a call to you. It's almost like a plea for some of you, or a cry for help that this part of you that's been a little bit neglected or unheard, this shadow part of you, really has something important to say. And I can't say what that is because it's different for all of you. What I can tell you is that right now you're in an absolutely amazing place. Like this year, this is the time to figure this out because you're in such a good place to do it. And weirdly enough, even though you haven't been hearing what's going on or rejecting it, um, you're in the perfect headspace to be able to confront it and grow from it in the way that is the most healthy and productive for you. And you deserve that, okay? You deserve to be loved. You deserve to love every part of you. You deserve to be healthy. You deserve everything you want in life. But sometimes we don't see those until we do some harsh growing and go through some rough growing pains. So you're starting in a position where you're 100% able to be creative physically, and spiritually and mentally. So, because this is talking about like your career or your goals. So, you're at a place where even if all this is taking place physically, you can still make stuff happen. And at the same time, if you chose to, you could spiritually make stuff happen. Which brings us to the next two cards, the zebra and the peacock. And for some reason, I'm getting called to tell my little pile two. I love all of you, by the way, no favorites. But some of you are going to progress to the zebra. Some of you are going to progress to the peacock. And some of you are going to use the zebra as a midpoint on your way to the peacock. I'm not going to tell you who's who because only you can figure that out. So if this resonates, great. Just take what doesn't. Plain and simple. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm giving you information so that you can grow from it if that is, you know, something you can do. Otherwise, this is just for entertainment. Okay, so the zebra, which we're going back to fire real quick here, is also known for being creative, but unlike the swan and looking inwards and wanting or craving some solo time to grow, the zebra is very more about using itself to create what they want to create or progress what they want to progress. So they're known for being eccentric as well as visionary. Um, and really, what that means is that they're very present in the world and they have the means to impact their world the way that they want to, however that may be. Like they have the power and the influence and the drive to be able to do that. And that's a really special gift. They're also enthusiastic and they look forward. They're not necessarily concerned with the past unless it's building from it, but they're not known for being in the cycle of their life like the swan, where they're reflecting and taking that pause to make the decisions they need and have the internal dialogue they need. The zebras are kind of in that next stage where they're like, I did the internal work. Now the external work happens. And in that cycle, you start to find that you will shape your life the way you want to shape it. And that sounds like a bold claim for those of you who, when we started this reading, I said some of you are really frustrated with where you are right now, and there's distrust in the universe because you feel like nothing is breaking your way, or the things you really feel you want or you need to break your way haven't been. But when you do the inner work, you'll see that things will start to change in your favor. And some of that will be from you bringing those changes into the physical world. And some of those will be from the physical world's external influences on your life starting to change because they are reflecting the changed you. And that's what's really powerful about the inner work that your shadow wants you to do. Okay, so the peacock, on the other hand, is a symbol of inner beauty as well as being able to have a profound effect on the world around them. So, one thing the guidebook talks about is being an assimilator of anything, quote unquote. Um, so, they're really good at being confident enough and secure enough with themselves to drive the world around them to see them in a similar light. And that's really, really powerful. So, when I talked earlier about how your shadow has that energy of like the mob boss in the back where people just know not to disrespect them, the peacock, in a way, brings that out to the forefront, and people will understand that you see yourself in a powerful, positive, confident, capable light. They'll pick up on that consciously or otherwise, and they will start reciprocating that to you because of the frequency that you will be blasting them with. And that's part of you picking up the parts of your shadow that you find worthy of incorporating into your human self. Will it be everything? No, but you also don't incorporate every single light part of you into your human self because either way would be very detrimental for you as a human being and wouldn't be aligned with your greatest good and what you came here to choose to do. So, for those of you who end the year as the zebra or transition into it and there's no foresight of going to the peacock, that doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't transform all the way or you failed or you're not as good as the people who did all the work to eventually embody like the peacock symbolism energy. Like there's none of that, like aside from we don't compare people here because we come from a place of love, and comparing people to figure out who's more valuable is not from a place of love. But also, you may be in this transition state for longer because being creative the way the zebra is so powerful that that's where you need to be long term, because you're just gonna like grab your own life and shake it till you get what you want. Whereas other people, other individuals, they're gonna go straight to the peacock and they're gonna say, I'm gonna get everything I want, but I don't have to lift a finger for it. And there are personalities that thrive better with both. So some people love to do it themselves, and some people, for different situations, they're just simply not going to need to in a tangible way. So maybe the zebra's building their own business from the ground up, and they're like, no one can do this better than me, and it's my frickin' business. So I'm not going to let someone else build it because then they can say that it's theirs and not mine. Like, no way. And so that's an example where the zebra personality is going to be more appropriate in that situation than perhaps the peacock. Whereas maybe the peacock is surrounded by a lot of people that disrespect them and they're in a position where they can't do anything about it. Like, let's say, like their family or all of their connections they can't cut ties for social or financial or political reasons, whatever it may be. They just start carrying themselves differently and accepting or not accepting certain statements or shit from other people. And all of a sudden, their family, who used to use them as the emotional punching bag, no longer has the room or the means or the permission to do so. And so now they are the kingpin. They're the person that the rest of the family starts looking to figure out how they should conduct themselves and what's appropriate. And they technically didn't lift a finger to do any amount of work there, but there's still a profound effect on the rest of the world. And it's possible that you'll transition from one to the other. You may jump between them. You may embody both at the same time. Like, there's no rules that said you can't be like the peacock zebra of the century, okay? Because, like, that would be pretty badass. I would like to see what your last two cards are here for talking about your energy and where you're starting and what you will eventually transition into when we're talking about yourself and no external factors. So this is personal growth, not like personal relationships or career or goals. And then if I feel called to, we'll grab some extra tarot cards to try to see if we can get some more information that would be significantly helpful to you. So we have the Nightingale as where you're going to start for this year, and then we have the Hawk as what you'll eventually transition it into. So both of these are air elements, and the air element is masculine, but that doesn't mean you have to be a male. So we all embody feminine and masculine energies as we need to. Um, and feminine and masculine in the if we're talking about metaphysical and spiritual things or beings or aspects of self, it's not the same as like human. Female and male, that's more of like a social construct that we are limited to, or like what we associate certain physical characteristics with that word as or otherwise. Um, and so these are very different. I just wanted to point that out there in case some people are like, wait, but I don't see myself as masculine. This is a little bit different. So air is also um, famously known for having a lot of great ideas um, and being able to clarify through your thoughts and how you see and perceive the world, what you want to do, where you want to go, what changes you would like to bring. There's a lot of inspiration that can be drawn when you're sitting in the air element. Um, and sometimes that has the drawback of kind of having your head in the clouds, where you have all of these aspirations and ideas and epiphanies and inspirations, but sometimes you can get so stuck in your head and it can be overwhelming to have so many different ideas come and go quickly that it's really hard to take those and ground it in another very different energy, like the zebra, which is good at using their hands and producing effects, or earth energy for grounding. So sometimes you'll see that what happens is you do all this work in your head, but sometimes it doesn't transfer into other results that are tangible. So, like physical world results. And I actually think that's okay. I was called to point it out because a lot of the work that you're going to be doing on yourself is going to feel like it's in your head. But it's not going to stay in your head. So, what I mean is, as you work on yourself, the rest of the world and how you are treated and the energies you magnetize are going to reflect yourself and your changes. So, you do your inner work first, and your outer world will warp to then reflect what you have chosen to embody or grow from or transform, like we talked about with the butterfly. And that's going to be an actual game changer for you. So it's kind of like what we talked about with the zebra and the
Mm.
peacock here. And I think that that is really beautiful. So, to get specifics on what all is going on for you and figuring out like exactly what you're doing for this work that's going to feel like it's in your head, but it's going to be a more profound, energetic, or spiritual experience. Hello, can you focus, buddy? There we go. Yeah, there we go. That's a little better. I apologize. All right, so the Nightingale is a really great place to start. So you can see the beak is open and it's kind of like screaming out this light, I guess you could call it. And so the Nightingale is known for embodying characteristics like being fearless, especially in terms of using your voice and speaking out. They're really effective communicators and they can get across to other people what they need to get across the way that they want to. And they're also known for speaking not just out, but being able to speak with kindness. So it's not just about like saying harsh things unless that's you're at a point in your life where that's really going to help you. And I think for some of you that is going to be the case because like we talked about earlier, your shadow is one of the best parts of you to channel. If you're in a position where no means needs to be said and it needs to be said seriously, like boundaries need to be set, because when you set boundaries, you're not prioritizing how other people are going to feel about those boundaries. You're prioritizing self care, self love, self preservation, and taking care of yourself first. So you have later the capacity to exercise self love, but also when you're in a good spot because you have taken care of yourself, that's when you can help others appropriately and not to your detriment. And so the Nightingale, even though a lot of it is speaking out with kindness, I feel like there's going to be varying degrees of kindness for all of you based on the conversations you have this year, the significant conversations, and the conversations that are about setting good boundaries if that's something you need to do. And there are kinder ways to say no. Other people who don't appreciate boundaries, which is the whole reason you need to set them, they will fight you regardless of how nice or how much kindness you present this rejection with. Because it doesn't have to be a very aggressive, no, I hate you, I never want to see you again, da 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 da, like you're the worst and really tearing into them. It can be as simple as no, and when someone asks you to explain, you say, I don't feel the need to. You don't need that to understand what no means. And that's okay. And if you feel like giving the explanation, like you can, but you don't have to. And just because someone else tells you no is inherently mean and you're doing them a disservice doesn't mean it actually is. And if there are people that have been taking advantage of your kindness and have transferred that into taking more than is appropriate, um, and kind of running over boundaries that shouldn't need to be established harshly, then there's somebody that likely isn't meant to be around long term or be as much of a part of your life. Um, and it doesn't mean you have to cut them out. You know, use discretion because this is a general reading. I'm not telling you how to live your life. This is just the energy I'm picking up on. So for some of you who need to set boundaries, absolutely do this. For a lot of you, I'm also seeing, though, that the Nightingale kind of starts with representing your internal dialogue. Um, so this is a great opportunity, not just to hear what different parts of yourself have to say. So if you sit down and meditate, understanding like how you feel and hearing what your internal dialogue is, regardless of where it's coming from, if it's you, if it's your worries, if it's your human ego, if it's just unpacking what's been happening in your present or recent past, or very long ago, if that's something that's been impacting you a lot lately, or if it's talking to like your shadow and hearing what your shadow has to say. Conversations are two-sided, you know. Otherwise, they're lectures. And so you have the power to not just hear what aspects of yourself are saying, but to tell yourself and different aspects of yourself what you want, what you need, what boundaries you want to put, what aspirations you have, what you expect from the other parts of yourself moving forward. So, example, I know some people have issues with at certain points in their lives of being a lot crueler to their selves than would be socially acceptable or acceptable for somebody else to do to them. Um, Specifically for this example, which it's an example, it may not apply to you directly. So, translate it if it's appropriate. But for example, if you've been having issues with an aspect of yourself that you're not happy about, so um, let's say when somebody was in high school, they didn't understand math to the degree as the other high schoolers in their grade did, and so they were put down a year or put into the um, like more intensive course to help catch you up. And that was really hard because in high school it's very easy to like compare yourself to others to try to figure out where your place is in the world and gauge how well you're doing. And there's a lot of aspects that influence that. But let's say that like you being put down a year or in a different course in math from a lot of your other colleagues and friends had an impact on your self-esteem and you don't feel as good about yourself, and so you start going through this internal dialogue of repeating really negative things to yourself, like, oh, I'm so stupid and I shouldn't have this issue with math. I should be where all my friends are because, like, that's what's normal and that's what's expected of me. And, like, I'm not as useful as everyone else around me, and like and that eventually evolves into like, wow, I'm worthless, and that bleeds over into other portions of your life where you just see yourself below a lot of other people, and that is really upsetting and that's hurtful, and it's a sad place to be. um and so part of your internal dialogue and part of the energy that you have right now in this like nightingale energy is to actually start changing your entire dialogue, your internal dialogue, and the way that you talk to yourself. So for this example, you could be telling yourself when you catch yourself saying like, oh, like I'm so stupid, like how dare I not get it? Because one, it's not true, and two, that's very, very unhelpful for getting yourself to a better place anyway. You could start catching yourself when you say those things and say, hey, I'm not stupid. Like, I can learn this, I just haven't yet. And just because I take more times at need more time at certain things and certain aspects of my life doesn't mean that I'm less valuable as a human being. And, everyone's good at certain things and everyone doesn't sit at what we call the average as other people. And that's okay because, like, if we were great at everything and everyone was like perfect at everything, then there would be no chance to grow. And there would be no way some people would, you know, excel at some things unless they didn't excel at others, if that makes sense. Like, there has to be a balance. So if you put more of your skills in certain things, you're not going to see a same appearance somewhere else. And that's kind of like the classic jack of all trades, master of none. If you were perfectly balanced, you just wouldn't be good at everything because you came to this world not to be a master of everything, because there wouldn't be any learning experiences for you. And that's what we're all here to do, is to grow as people, and learning is a massive way in which we grow. So I hope that helps. But if you have an internal dialogue that is particularly negative about any characteristic about yourself, whether it be worth, how much money you make, how successful you believe you are, your physical attributes, if there's things about your looks you wish you could change, your intellect, your friends, any of it, you're in a really great energy to start challenging that. And that's part of what your shadow, for a lot of you, wants to help you do. They're here to tell you, like, I'm here to be your advocate, and I'm here to actually fight things that are detrimental to you. And so if you start challenging yourself, if you have negative internal dialogues, um, and you start challenging those, you'll see they're more effective than you would expect them to be if you keep challenging them, if you're persistent, because another part of you is going to back yourself up. And you might not feel that because we don't always know what our higher selves are doing all the time. There's a lot going on in the background that our human brain like does not constantly process, but that's something you're going to see. And if you're in a safe place where you can actually challenge some people around you, like we talked about with the peacock, where as you start carrying yourself different and just telling people no, it's going to be, in certain cases, if you keep it up, you'll get a lot of pushback at first because certain external forces or individuals, they're going to be used to getting away with it. So when you tell them no and it's different, they're going to push back because they're going to say, no, hey, this was a right that I had. And you're going to say, it was never a right that you had. I just let you get away with it longer than you should have. And we're not doing that anymore. This was never your right, so that I'm not taking anything away from you. Um, and they will fight with that. And if they continue to fight with it, then, like, they don't deserve you in their lives, obviously, um, because they're not coming from a place of love. And, that's what you're being encouraged to surround yourself with if you have the means to do so. So whether you do internal work or baby steps outside of it or both, if any of that has to do with communication, um, it's going to be more effective than you expect, and it's going to be more effective than you realize at first. So just like stick with it and be persistent if you can, which the Nightingale is like really great at. And then later in your life, later this year, um, eventually you're going to see this transformation, and it's going to be through persistence of being your biggest advocate and supporting yourself in ways that um, you hadn't been supporting yourself before. And so again, like removing the old wood from your foundation and just maintenance and fixing yourself up, all of that is going to help you transition into the hawk. And this isn't going to be a night and day like flip a switch for a lot of you. For a lot of you, it's going to be this gradual change. Whereas over here, for like vulture to fire ants and like swan to zebra and peacock, I see that more as like a switch being flipped or a light bulb going off. Or one day, like you're just going to go, oh, like I know what to do and I know how to handle this. And you're going to start handling things. And then it's going to snowball. Whereas over here, I feel like your internal work is going to be more gradual. So you won't one day wake up and say, hey, I feel like the hawk today. But what's going to happen is eventually you're going to go, oh, like I've made a lot of progress and now I can see it when you made the transition like a while ago. And that can be encouraging too. But the hawk is it's sort of like the nightingale where it's still very ethereal and like in your head in terms of what we're talking about. But the vibe I'm getting is kind of like when your Pokemon goes from like a second to third evolution, you're still the same entity. You still have a lot of the same characteristics, but they're more powerful and you maybe picked up like a couple new tricks along the way. Um, and so what I'm really seeing is that as the hawk, you're still going to have a very powerful voice and a massively impactful dialogue. So you still need to be careful about being kind to yourself and choosing the words that you choose to repeat to yourself, because you can fall back into a negative dialogue if that's what you worked so hard to recover from. And it doesn't mean it will be the same patterns of negative dialogue. So if before you were kind to yourself because you were upset with physical attributes, it might evolve into now you're unkind to yourself because you feel like you don't fit the bill of being successful in whichever way you view that. So you might not be reverting back to the same thing, but it's that pattern of being unkind to yourself that you need to or not need to, I don't want to sound preachy, but you're being called to be cognizant of, because this is still, being kind to yourself is still fresh, and human bodies and minds and brains, even if there's energies that are detrimental or habits and patterns that are detrimental, that's their comfort zone and what they've become adapted to. So if all of a sudden you flip to positivity, which is great for you, but it requires your brain to have a change of circuitry, neuronal connections, and overall brain chemistry. And that then will in turn affect the rest of your body. And even though it's positive, that change is something your body will say, hey, I'm not used to this. I haven't done this in a very long time. And so you might find yourself trying to slip into those negative cycles of thinking. But because one failed, they may try to grab on to something else. And so it doesn't mean it will happen. This is just more of a warning for some of you that, like, if you're made aware of it, it'll be easier for yourself to catch it. And so this won't turn into, okay, well, now I have to fix this habit. It'll just be, I'm not going to let this habit start. And that can be really helpful for protecting yourself. So, unlike the nightingale, the hawk is more famous for having very good eyesight. So, the hawk here kind of symbolizes being all seeing, which means you can see these things more clearly that right now you're having a little bit of trouble with. So for some of you who you're fine with wanting to talk to your shadow, but for some reason you can't perceive them very well. You can't pick up on the communications they're trying to give you to help you out. As you practice this, it's going to be really easy to talk to them. Like from the point where you learn how, moving forward, you're going to see what they want, and you'll also be able to see what the lighter side of you wants as well. Like, you're going to be having just an overall masterful time talking to these other facets of you as a multifaceted being. And it's going to help you stay in balance and conduct yourself the rest of your life moving forward in the ways that you would like to, so that you don't get stuck in a frustrating position to the same degree. Now, everyone goes through cycles, so there's going to be other times when you're frustrated, but it won't feel as deadlocked as this one does now if you have those frustrations. So, the hawk being all seeing is also going to be really advantageous for those of you who are having struggles with external things. So, in the future, you'll see the patterns really easily, and it'll be really easy for you to, instead of accidentally running into it, avoiding it altogether. So, for example, if some of you have a negative issue regarding another person who has narcissistic tendencies or has the narcissistic disorder, which I know that word gets thrown around a lot, and so it's sort of become diminished and demeaned in a way. But it's still very real, and those people can be incredibly manipulative and damaging. So if there's somebody like that that's giving you a lot of trouble, I wish you all the best. And if you need to talk to a professional, please go seek out professional help, whatever that means to you, if it's safe to. And so let's say for this example, there's a narcissist that's very close to you in your life, and they're at the phase of the relationship where they feel comfortable not masking themselves because they're masters of that, but manipulating yourself and being very cruel in maybe multiple ways. And so as you evolve through this tendency, you'll find a way to get away from them and have them fall out of your lives, and they'll no longer be a problem. And you'll have learned so many things from this experience that now, as the hawk, you'll recognize people with those tendencies, and you'll understand what they look like and what those people look like, even though in the beginnings of relationships, they're really good at hiding how damaging and hurtful um, they can be and how manipulative they are. You'll instead sniff it out so easy that you won't ever get close to another one again. to the same degree. Like you'll figure it out really quickly and then say, nope, no thank you. Like I've dealt with this before, I'm not doing it anymore. And it'll be really easy for you to set those boundaries and just move on and not repeat this cycle. Um, and so the hawk is going to mean a lot of different things for everybody based on what situation they're growing from and moving out of. But for all of you, it means that you're going to have the awareness needed to not have to repeat a cycle to this degree again, or have the past repeat itself in as dramatic and detrimental of a way, if this is a very big thing. For those of you who have more of like a minor thing and you're just trying to like balance up, um, most of what the hawk is telling you is it's going to be really easy moving forward for you to pick up on when you're out of balance sooner so that the scales don't get skewed as bad. And a lot of that is going to be from being able to hear and see like your shadow and light selves and take their input under consideration as like part of your like little council, if you will, of advisors sooner, because ultimately your shadow and light self are just advisors. Like you make all the decisions. So I really like that energy moving forward for you. I think that's super exciting and a really big awesome achievement. So I'm a little bit curious about what's going on, I guess, with personal relationships, perhaps. I'm being called to revisit the fire ant card, actually. So when we talked about the fire ant, we were talking about being disciplined and being able to follow orders and being aggressive when needed, but in a way that allows you to take care of yourself and telling other parts of yourself no and staying in control if you need to. Um, and being able to decide what you're going to do and what steps you're going to take and what decisions you're going to make, regardless of what any other part of yourself says, because you are you. They are not the whole you. You're the whole you. That's why they talk to you. You don't talk to them, if that makes sense. And so I'm kind of curious about what's going on with this, like the role some other relationships might have with you. So let me pull a couple cards. I'm using this tarot called the New Chapter Tarot, um, which I think is just so fitting for a reading for a brand new year, where you know it's thought of as us opening a new chapter or transitioning to one. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna pull some cards, and I'm mostly asking about. I'm gonna ask your shadow specifically, like what it is that they've been itching to help you out with or tell you for however long they've been trying. But it feels like it's been a while. Like things are a little stagnant, a little skewed, um, and we'll see what we get. All right, we're gonna take these two cards and these three, and then we're gonna flip the deck because I feel called to. Okay, it's a lot of cards, but sometimes messages are complicated, so sometimes we need a lot of cards, and I want to make sure they're on screen. So what we have here is we have a Seven of Cups. We have the Hanged Man, which we'll put here, and the Judgment card. Okay, and then we have the Ten of Swords in reverse. We have the Princess of Sword and the Princess of Cups in reverse, as well as the Queen of Swords and the Strength card. Bear with me for how I use my cards. I know it's a little uh, defunct or not of the norm. The reason the cards are spread like this is because I was asking for one thing what your shadow has been itching to tell you for a long time. And they ended up telling me about how that's going to affect your personal relationships, your career and goals, and growth within yourself. So your shadow's been trying to say something that's going to impact every part of you and will in turn cause positive changes within your outside world. Um, and I think that the synchronicities when these cards hit is all it always just kind of like surprises me. So the 7 of Cups over the Hawk and the Nightingale is probably the simplest place to start because in this deck specifically, but overall to a degree, yes. The 7 of Cups is really pushed to talk about how you're getting a glimpse into a whole bunch of possibilities. And of course, you're the one that gets to make the choice on which ones you pursue. But by doing this inner work and changing your dialogue for yourself to higher parts of yourself or other parts of yourself, and to some things in the world around you, you're going to open up a lot of different freedoms that you felt like you didn't have before. And specifically, what's happening is you're getting these freedoms because you're resolving internal issues that were holding you back. So, by somehow being kinder to yourself, rebalancing yourself, not rejecting parts of yourself that you deem unworthy or scary or embarrassing due to what other people told you or just what you yourself decided, um, as you kind of mature and evolve and find a way to accept all parts of yourself and figure out what you're going to do with them moving forward, you'll see that you had a lot more possibilities available to you than you otherwise thought possible. And if we're specifically talking about um, just what this means for your own personal growth, you're going to have more avenues for you to grow and develop as a person, which will continue you to run like it'll let you run faster and faster towards whatever you want to achieve or complete within this lifetime. But I think the 7 of Cups is kind of funny because it's supposed to talk about or enlighten us on what's going on with your personal growth. And they said, hey, when you fix whatever issue you have or complete whatever task you need to for your internal status and for you to be more whole and balanced and be kinder to yourself, it'll change your outside world. So your shadow keeps doing this loop of like work on yourself and everything else will pan out the way that you wanted it to. It'll just take a little bit of time to see that reflection and that's it. um and so they keep looping like from one side of the table to the other and back again, which I think is I don't want to call it funny, but I think it's really cool that your shadow figured out a way to do that with cards on make its own little cycle. Um, and so in this deck, I wanted to point out that the princesses are the pages. So you have the Page of Cups and the Page of Swords, and pages are known for being like more novice to or like newer, so they're still somewhat masters of these cards in this deck, but they're not as experienced or as like refined as the queens and the kings and all that, and they don't move as fast as the knights, but there's a lot of how do I put it, there's a lot of like advantageous qualities that come from being fresh and less experienced to something. Like it's easier to just see the magic, see the possibilities, dive in headlong, be excited because it's new. And both of these being in reverse, I find very interesting because they're in reverse for different reasons. And this is where psychics can pick up a little bit of scrutiny. So if you see something else different in the cards, that is a message specifically for you and you shouldn't ignore that. But what I see is that the Princess of Swords is in reverse because your shadow is usually associated with the so below aspects of self. And The Princess of Swords, specifically in this deck, is talking a lot about being courageous and being cautious at the same time. And how there's this dichotomy of freedom and groundness that's causing tension within yourself. Now, what I hear from your shadow is they're saying if you ground yourself the way that you need to, and if you actually talk to your shadow self the way it's been trying to get your attention, and your higher self in general, if you're more sensitive to that and you don't deny certain parts of yourself, you kind of follow your intuition more and you understand what you want and what you're being called to do and how you would like to develop yourself in the future, what you'll see is that you'll have more freedoms. So just like we saw over here, when you do internal work in a way to where you accept every part of yourself and you decide how you want to take that information and develop yourself further, you'll have more freedoms. And a lot of what you're being called to work on is parts of you that you haven't been able to hear for a long time, you've been denying for a long time, you've been rejecting for a while. Um, and your shadow, for some of you, is actually telling you what we've seen a little bit before of there are, for some of this pile too, there are those of you out there who you can have your shadow help support you in creating healthy, appropriate boundaries to tell other people no. Because we're talking about individual, personal relationships here. So that outside of like career work goals. Um, and so for some of you, you can lean on your shadow to give you the courage and the self respect you need to say, I don't have like the room, or I'm not going to give myself the guilt trips of feeling bad for telling somebody else no. Like, I've been kind to them for a long time. They're being detrimental towards me. I'm going to now set boundaries because through our interactions, it's apparent that I have to set the boundaries because the way the status quo is now and the amount of liberties that they have imposed upon me are not healthy for me. And that's very okay. Um, so I also want to talk for a second about how the Page of Cups in reverse specifically can symbolize that there's an overflow of new ideas and inspirations that instead of empowering you and inspiring you to move forward, you get headlocked, and you go into like a decision paralysis, which is interesting because over here with the hawk and the nightingale, we were and the zebra, we were talking about how eventually you're going to be at a phase in your life where you have this influx of amazing ideas, in the swan too, and you'll find a way to then have those translate into tangible work and wonderful things achieved by you that you can be proud of. So I think right now you kind of have a lot of ideas of what you want. So for example, like when we talked about if you are if you were at some point like getting bullied and you just want to stand up and like punch the bully, just deck them in the mouth because it'll feel good, like whatever your situation is, I feel like you've had multiple instances where you kind of can't help but think about it. So you think about all these ways of, oh, I wish I could do that, and it would be really great if I did this, and it'd be really cool if I could do this. And your shadow's kind of saying, like, some of those examples may be extreme and not what you ultimately want to do, but when you sit down and daydream about those things and like seriously consider all of them and run through all of them enough, you'll keep finding new ideas over and over. And eventually, one of those will make sense and kind of help you out and be a viable solution that you're happy and proud with pursuing, even if it does take courage. Oh, excuse me, take courage. So for the for the Page of Cups that's in reverse here, they're really talking about how do I put it? So the Page of Cups is usually met with symbolizing compassion and feeling grounded and being able to act in a nurturing way and spreading love to other people. And that can specifically be through different creative outlets. Um, and ultimately, what's happening is the Page of Cups is symbolizing the energy of taking action to create what you think of as the ideal world. So there's a lot of innocence involved. There's a lot of selfless love, and it's really about like doing what you can with what you have right now at the time that you have it and transforming that into a way of serving stuff outside of you lovingly to try to develop the world into however you believe the ideal world looks like. It's in reverse here because I think this energy has been overflowing in you if you're someone who's in a negative situation and your boundaries aren't being respected. And it's at a point where it's detrimental to you to continue giving. And this energy is showing up as reverse because your shadow's trying to tell you you need to back off and take care of yourself, because using yourself as a means to help other people is wonderful when you're in a position where you can do that. Like helping others is a luxury because you have to be in a position where you can afford that. You can afford the time, the effort, the resources, and not all of us have that constantly, and that's okay. You don't need to help people all the time to be defined as a good person, as a healthy person, as a loving person. That's something you have to give to yourself first and then give to other people. And the problem that I've seen a lot is we draw a lot of ideals from the world around us because we're social creatures and we're raised in society, and certain things are like, you know, talked about positively and some things are talked about more negatively. And sometimes that gets skewed due to social structures. So, specifically, what I mean here is um, usually selfless acts, regardless of if they're at the detriment of others or yourself, usually selfless acts are thought of as great and they're talked very highly of and they're encouraged by everybody around you. But normally, when we hear about self care, somebody else who wants something from you will have something loud to say that's negative. They'll shame you or they'll pressure you into putting it off. And not always. Like there are people out there who will talk about how self care is important and you should take care of yourself and like, you know, here's a good self care routine and la la la. But they'll do that until they want something from you, and then it's no longer the same tune. So I've seen for a lot of people and myself included, there will be patterns of when you go out of your way to do something nice, like you go do a favor for a family member or friend, even though you're really exhausted from a day of work, that's met with thank yous and smiles and like, oh, you're the best and this was really great and da da da. But then if you're exhausted from a day of work and they're like, hey, can you go get this thing for me? I don't feel like it. And you say, no, I'm tired. That's usually met with resistance in some way. There's like resentment, or there's extra asking, or there's begging, or they hold it over your head later, or they're like annoyed at you. And so there's this dichotomy of self love and taking care of yourself first is usually met with accusations of being selfish, or I thought you liked me more, um, or like you're not that important right now, but like this thing that I have is more pressing. And it's like it's more pressing to you, but it's not more pressing to me. And there are going to be, you know, like exceptions and caveats to all of this. So for example, if you are in a position where you have to take care of another human being, um, or a child, then sometimes you're not going to be able to push them aside and say, like, maybe later, hold on. So, for example, like when I come home from work, I have to walk the dogs because they can't take themselves outside to relieve themselves. And, you know, that's very different from telling a fully capable human being, you can do that yourself. You just don't want to because it's an inconvenience. um, not something you depend on somebody else for. So again, life is complicated. You have to use discretion, but that's kind of the energy I'm picking up of being a martyr and overextending yourself when you don't need to. That's not your responsibilities. Is a form of self betrayal. And a lot of what your shadow is here to say is you don't need to have martyr like tendencies or be a martyr or serve other people to your own detriment. And when you stop doing that, when you have healthy boundaries and you love yourself, you'll see that more freedoms will open up for you and your life will progress in whatever way you want to. And that will relieve frustrations um, that you've been dealing with for quite a while. And I think that's a really beautiful message. And so, as we talk about these other cards here, when we talk about, the Queen of Swords is very intelligent, and they grab their intelligence from multiple places, including, for this deck, emotions and compassion. And so, what's really going on here is your shadow is trying to tell you as you practice self love, healthy boundaries, accepting yourself for who you are, for those that this applies to, you'll transition into this energy of being able to make compassionate decisions and shape the world the way you want to because you're in a healthy part and you can afford that luxury now. um, and it won't feel draining or negative or hurtful anymore when you do so. And that'll allow you to do so better and more often and produce much more impactful and quicker results. So, this is a lot about take care of yourself first because something about yourself is not being taken care of the way it needs to, and you're a little thrown off balance. And however it is that you fix that, however like grand or trivial the problem is, when you do it, you'll see positive effects and you'll be able to do what you want to do the way you want to do it, which is very exciting. Um, so over here, as far as tying this into career goes, the strength card isn't just about being powerful and embodying strength, whatever that means to you. It's about being able to produce results and influence others and conduct yourself um, in a way that's kind and loving and gentle. So it's not about this aggression of beating certain aspects of the world or yourself into complacency to get what you want. It's coming from a place of love and respect. So um, you don't have to use aggressive movements, if that makes sense. So um, one of the best examples I have is there's a strength card in another deck where the woman, instead of just looking at the lion, she's holding his mouth open and she's like unafraid looking in it. But you don't get the sense that she wrestled this lion to the ground and is like pinning his jaws to opposite ends of his head. She's like very gently holding his mouth because she doesn't even need to use her full strength when she's approaching the problem or the situation from a point of love and serenity and respect. And that's where a lot of the strength comes from. So as you rebalance yourself, you're not going to feel as frustrated or desperate or angry, and that's going to allow you to handle things with a lot of strength that's coming from within. But when that's presented to the world around you and they pick up on that subconsciously or otherwise, you're not going to need to apply as much strength or as much effort or take as long convincing yourself or others of what you would like to do and why it's a good idea. You'll just naturally garner that respect because your strength will show through. So even though it's kind of a crude example, you know, a lot of people will say like speak softly but carry a big stick, because people will see the big stick and go, they don't have to yell at me to scare me. The stick itself is intimidating enough. um, and not that you're threatening people, but people will see how powerful you are, so you'll never have to exercise that power, as an example of why you should be seen as strong and get the respect you want. It's very like adjacent to the peacock energy we talked about. People are going to pick up on how amazing and well put together you are and how deserving of love and respect you are. And so when you start to do other things in the world, you won't have to ask for permission, but people will give you permission, and they will either get out of your way or they will take actions to actively support you and help you on your journey. And that's all coming from a place of love, which is wonderful. So over here for the last three cards, we have Judgment and we have the Hanged Man, and then we have the Ten of Swords in reverse. Now the Ten of Swords is usually talking about um, you being in a very difficult situation, and it's sort of like in its climax, like the worst it could be, the worst of the worst. And I think what's happening here with the Ten of Swords in reverse and the dark being on top and the light being at the bottom, um, your shadow's kind of telling you that this isn't necessarily the worst of the worst, which isn't trying to scare you into saying you're going to have much worse problems later. Your shadow's trying to tell you this issue that you have, you're not stuck in, and it will resolve whenever you're ready to resolve it. And you'll be ready to resolve it when you have all of this internal dialogue and you have the courage and the means to do the work and the time to put into that. And really the issue you have isn't being blown out of proportion, but it's being misconstrued. Um, and by that, your shadow is telling you that they don't see themselves as a problem, but they know you see your shadow and the message your shadow has as a problem. So as soon as you learn how to have a healthy discourse and relationship with your shadow, and you understand your shadow and the ideas it has doesn't define you, it's another layer of how to get information to have personal growth and conduct yourself and set healthy boundaries. Once you have all that, you'll realize this was never really an issue that was meant to be long term or unsolvable. And it is, in fact, very solvable. And later in your life, your shadow hopes you look back at this and kind of like laugh, because you'll realize that, like, no part of you could ever scare yourself the way you think you are. uh, and that all has to do with you just simply, like, in this lifetime, not necessarily understanding how the shadow works and how to deal with it. And that's not your fault, you know? Like, there's a lot of misinformation and misconstruing about shadows and shadow work, and that's okay. But and everyone's shadow is different, so some people's may be scarier than others, but yours has no ill intentions. It's not unbalanced. And the fact that you're worried about it means it will never become unbalanced because you're sensitive to that. um, and so this leads us into the last two cards, the Judgment and the Hanged Man, which sometimes the Ten of Swords will tell you, like, you're stuck. Um, but the conjunction between the Hanged Man and Judgment and the Ten of Swords is showing you that you aren't stuck. You're only stuck if you continue to reject certain parts or feelings of yourself and you don't take the time and effort to process those thoughts, those feelings, those emotions properly. Um, and so there's a lot of self realization here that's going to take place. We've kind of talked about that before. But when you do whatever work is necessary to combat yourself and others, and you start to transition into a healthier mindset and state of being, you'll see that you weren't stuck. And this is only going to take as much time as you need it to take. And I know that sounds very vague, but for all of you, it's different. And this is a general reading, so I can only get so specific. But the Hanged Man is just about, for this reading, it's just about it's okay to sit back and use patience to cultivate an internal understanding. So it's like, it's about centering yourself by not applying pressure to the physical world around you. So if you're just hanging there, like just hang there, just hang out and work on your internal dialogue and tensions. And if there are parts of denial or embarrassment or other negative emotions, like process those the way that is healthy and appropriate for you. And this doesn't mean rush something or tell yourself you're fine and everything's going to be okay if you don't feel like it's fine and okay. Um, it means take whatever steps are feasible and healthy for you at that time. And whenever you need a breather, you take that breather. A lot of the Hanged Man here is telling you that understanding that yourself needs work is in no way an appropriate reason to further shame yourself, be upset with yourself, be impatient with yourself. And if you feel like um, you're taking too long, you're not. You're taking the time needed because whatever you're processing could be really traumatic. And especially if it was going on for an extended period of time or even years, it may be unrealistic to expect that you can get over years worth of trauma in like 3 days. Because there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of habits to get over. There's a lot of cycles that may need to change, and that takes maintenance, not like necessarily one epiphany moment that just flips a switch. So for some of you, if you feel like this isn't going as fast as you want, take some time. And for others of you, if the transition is really fast and everything feels super new and uncomfortable and you're a little bit scared of that and you're still learning how to conduct yourself, you can also take a lot of time or as much time as you feel you need to get comfortable with the new self before you start, like with the zebra here, bringing that into the physical world, or the strength in the Queen of Swords, like applying yourself. If you're still uncomfortable with yourself, you can take more time to settle into your new energy and understandings and vibes before you bring that to the external world. Because what can happen is when the external world starts pushing back on you, they approve of certain things and reject others, that can waver you if you're not totally settled in and convinced on your new self and happy with your new self. And wavering isn't the same thing as breaking. And if someone challenges you and you take a second to reflect on it, that's not a bad thing, for sure. But this just means that if you feel uncomfortable presenting your new self to the world, like just spend some more time with your new self. And when you gain the confidence you feel is appropriate, then you can go do things. So there's no need to rush, regardless on what side of the coin you feel you're on here. So, lastly, for the Judgment card, um, the Judgment card is symbolizing, the dying of a specific era and renewing into something else, when we're talking about this specific Judgment card. So we have like a plant sprouting here, um, as well as some dead leaves. So what you'll notice is that like a whole plant isn't died, like a tree isn't chopped down. And so your shadow is really trying to tell you you're just pruning what needs to be pruned or what you feel like pruning. So you're just looking for the rotten wood in your foundation. Like you don't have to tear everything down unless you really feel like tearing everything down. And that's also fine. Um, because whatever you feel appropriate is supported and is right because you're you and no one knows you the way that you do. So you make the choices. But some minor pruning will make a big difference, and you don't have to do it all at once. You can get rid of the leaf that's easiest to let go of, or the one that's easiest to identify as a clear, yeah, I don't want this anymore. um, and then after that leaf is gone, maybe it'll be apparent there's another leaf that's really easy to let go of. So like there's one leaf that's like brown and shriveled and already falling off, And that's the only one you can see. When you cut that away, maybe you'll see a second one and you'll go, okay, that's easy to get rid of too. And you can kind of work around things that way. There may also be cases where, like, you see a leaf where you're like, I hate that leaf and I don't want it here. That's not me. Um, but when you have this internal dialogue, you'll look at it and you'll be like, never mind, that one's my favorite. And there's nothing wrong with it, even though I thought that there was. Like, just because it's a slightly different shade of green doesn't mean that it's not me. So hopefully that makes sense. I know that was that was a little bit of a weird example, but that's what we're getting. There's also a reminder that, like, these cycles are normal. So again, there's no reason to feel bad about it or shame yourself for it. There may be external people in your life that you wish you could talk to this about, but or when you try to talk to them about it, you'll learn that they're not supportive, and that can be just because, like, they're not interested in the kind of stuff, or they don't like this kind of stuff, or they feel like the growth you're going through isn't what they want. Like, they don't want you to conduct yourself in this new way. That can be for a multitude of reasons. It can be different for all of you. Some, it will be like selfish intentions, and others may just simply not get it. um, and so you may find that even though you want to talk to other people about this, some people may not be appropriate to talk to about it at first. There are some people who they might not get it, and that can frustrate you. But after you make the change, they'll say, "Oh, you're doing so much better. Like you look great now, and I'm so happy to see that you're happy. And like, I'm sorry I didn't support this at first because I didn't understand that this would pan out for you." It almost has that energy of, like, sometimes people will start a new company and their closest friends or family will be like, don't do that, like, go get a stable job because that's guaranteed to work out for you. And you're like, no, I'm passionate about this, I'm really going to go all in and go do it. And then after your company is well off and making you more money than your friends and family, that's when they support you and they're like, oh cool, it's successful, like that's great, like, can I come work for you, or like, can I have some more money, do you want to hang out more often, that kind of a thing. um or just like, I'm really happy and I'm proud of you now because it's successful. And we're not going to unpack how some of those dynamics are complicated and may or may not be helpful, but that's kind of the energy I'm getting of this judgment card, is that some people might not understand the cycle you're going through. So use discretion when you're talking to other people about it, especially because this is shadow work. And a lot of people, based on like stigmas that we have right now at the time of filming this video, um, a lot of people, like, they think that that inherently makes you like weird, or like that's like an icky vibe, and they don't like it or understand it, and that's scary, and they like conflate it to like malicious external entities, and they're like, oh, do you need to like go get exercise or whatever, and it's like, this has nothing to do with any of that. Like, all of this is healthy and coming from a place of love, and it's wonderful, and I'm really excited for you. And if you clicked on this pile and you're still here because you were courageous enough to hear about shadow work, like, I have to applaud you for that, because it takes a lot of courage to start understanding sides of you that have been shamed and villainized for a long, long time. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of you, and I'm here for you, even though I'm not a licensed professional as far as like therapy or psychologist or any of that goes. So, you can leave comments if you want, to get support for the community. If you want to remain more anonymous, you can always like send um, me emails, and I'm always excited to hear about your guys' stories, even if you feel like you haven't made a lot of progress. So you can do that. Email link is in the description. But I do want to move on now. Now that we kind of got it clarified that this is a lot about, you do the inner work first and everything else will cascade after, and it'll be pretty effortless. Like, it'll be easy for you to make the decisions you want to make and change your external world the way that you want to, once you're happy and solidified in the new energies that you're going to transition into from your inner work. I also want to say, I know you can't see my head, so you don't know, which is why I'm telling you, I do listen to music when I do readings, and that's largely because I get a lot of messages through songs, and for more or less, everyone's different. But in this pile specifically, I've been having this song come up over and over again, even though none of my songs are supposed to repeat. Um, it's kind of a dark song, so don't listen to it unless it's your type of music, because I don't want the song itself to like scare you away or perpetuate a negative perception of your shadow. But there's a song by Blackbird and Saliva Gray. It's called Bullet Hell. I know, crazy name, but there's a couple lines in it that I think are really empowering, because the song has an overall energy of I don't really care what your intentions are or where you're coming from. If you're going to like do things to me or impose ideas on me that are not healthy for me, I will fight back. Um, and there are a few lines of the song that I think are really impactful. One of them is talking about how if if you're gonna fight me, like it's not gonna work because I am bullheaded. And every time he kind of says that line of something's trying to kill me, but I won't let it, and like I'm bullheaded. Um, I think that's most of the energy you're being encouraged to sit in is be less concerned with what other people around you want from you and what they think, and just take the time and space that you can in your position to understand like what you need, because at a certain point your shadow specifically is recognizing that itself and other parts of you are neglected, and that's what's throwing you out of balance. So I wanted to move on to, let's leave the zebra and the peacock on top, because I think being uh, the world's best peacock zebra is a pretty cool thing to call yourself, even if no one else is going to understand. Um, and we'll put it right up here with the Larimar to the side. Woohoo! And I have these advice cards for you. Now, don't tell other piles. You were only supposed to get 3, but you got 5 because your shadow is very talkative. So there's another really important line in this song that I wanted to bring up real quick while I was reading the guidebook here, because I can't remember everything for all these oracle cards. There is a line that says, it's very accusatory, but it says, I bet you would sell your kidney for a replacement. And I believe that from good intentions, your shadow is trying to tell you you're doing too much for other people at your detriment, and it's making you go in circles. I think there's a second side of this for some of you. Take what resonates, leave the rest, where your shadow is giving you the really hard truth of you're trying to get a quick fix out of this situation, and it's causing you to backpedal completely, and you end up being in a worse status quo than where you were fixing the hasty situation. So, for example, if you sell your kidney because you want some quick money, which please don't, please don't. I really hope that you don't. But let's say that you do, and all of a sudden you're like, well, crap, my other kidney isn't that great. I really need another one. Now you have a kidney that's not yours if you manage to get a hold of another one. And you're going to have to pay a lot more than you sold your first one for, because there's like transport and the actual procedure and all that. And so now you're in a worse spot after you tried to do a quick fix. Um, and so your shadow's kind of telling you, like, don't rush, stop looking for quick fixes, sit down, slow down, work on yourself, and everything will resolve. And it will resolve much better than you could have ever imagined. And that's a really supportive, really beautiful statement. For the first example I gave of being nice to other people is detrimental to yourself because maybe you're overextending what you can do without harming yourself. Um, I think it's kind of like if it's giving the vibes of if you gave away your kidney, and I know it says sell your kidney, but the other way I'm hearing it is if someone really asked you to and pressured you to, you would absolutely give them your kidney. And that's coming from a place of love from you, and that's nice. But the issue is if you're in a situation where like that's not good for you, like your other kidney isn't doing as well, you're not in grand health, you have medications that put stress on your kidneys, like whatever it is, you give away this kidney and all of a sudden your health starts failing because of that. And now you find yourself in this situation where now you need someone to give a kidney to you, and that puts like more undue stress on yourself from like the medical expenses and making sure that you don't reject this new organ and the stress of finding someone else who's compatible with you and this, that, and the other. And I don't want to relate this to anyone who has gone through the stressful experience of donating the organ or needing an organ donation. But this example is more talking about like there's this theme of your kindness to others has been overextended to the point where you're damaging yourself, and sometimes you don't see it at first, but there will be like drastic consequences later, and usually it's in a way to try to self mitigate the damage you've done to yourself by trying to be nice to other people. And again, we kind of talked about those dynamics of self preservation isn't as praised as helping others, just based on how like society and other people function and us being social creatures. Being nice to other people is more loudly spoken out for as a good thing because all these other people view it as being cool and they want to be around you if you're going to do nice stuff for them. um, but being great to yourself is going to give you the ability later on to help everyone in the way that you want to, being a fantastic person that wants to spread this love to other people, but in the way that you want to. Because I believe that however you're trying to help people, it is kind of in your life's purpose if you feel called to that, to serve other people, but you're going to find the right way to do it so that it also doesn't harm yourself. So, what I'm getting from this is that the two middle cards overlap. And what's going on is your first card here, Flow, is talking just about overarching energies, and then the Eagle is the overarching energy and an overlapping message with the Luminous Warrior about the second topic, and these two talk about the third topic. So that's how I'm going to break this down. Um, so normally I paraphrase all these messages, and I give you a little bit more information outside of them. But I feel like I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't actually read the first message off of the Flow card here. Well, there we go. Oh, haha, it kind of focused. Yeah. So I'm going to read that for you real quick. And it's kind of funny how the synchronicities work here. But the Flow card is here to tell you that there's a natural movement of events in the world, and you can see it in phenomena such as the tide, the ebb and flow of the oceans, and the rivers that rise up from the earth and flow into the sea. The symbol of flow represents the effortless and natural movement toward a certain destination. It signifies an ability to gracefully move around obstacles and reminds you of the sense of allowing. So a lot of this is a call to, as you heal, allowing things. You allow yourself to feel without judgment. You hear everything that every part of your mind and your intuition, your heart, your ego, your light self, your dark self, your consciousness. You allow all of it to say what it wants to say. And after you allow that dialogue to happen completely, then you allow yourself time to reflect on it and accept what you want, act on what you want, and reject what you want. But you do it in a loving way. You don't say, I can't believe I would think something like that. Instead, you think about like you don't self-shame for it. Instead, you say, that was a that was an idea a part of myself had, and I'm not going to perpetuate that idea, and I'm not going to accept that idea, so I'm going to release it. And as releasing it, that idea is not a part of me, so I don't need to feel bad about it. um, it's kind of like how in like fourth grade or whenever, third grade, at least for like American schools, at some point they teach you how to like brainstorm to write essays, and you just write down a bunch of ideas, but your essay only turns out to be based off of like one of those ideas in like all these words you wrote down in different ways. Um, and that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here, is that you don't have to identify with every single little part, because the end product, the essay from all of these brainstorms, you from all of these ideas and energies and frequencies, isn't identified as all of these previous frequencies and ideas. Like, you only embody what you want to. And if you have ideas or move through frequencies that you think are gross or are embarrassing or you don't want to embody, like, you're not going to, and you don't have to worry about it and you don't have to feel bad about it. Um, so we're going to move on to the eagle here. And the eagle will give you two messages, but the eagle is a symbol in these oracle cards of being a new beginning and an empowered new beginning. And just like the hawk, the eagle sees bigger pictures and more things than what maybe some previous versions of yourself could see. And the eagle can traverse their environment with basically no obstacles. They can rise above all of that. And so what they really only see is all of these wonderful opportunities. And because there are so many opportunities, the eagle, or in this case yourself, you have the luxury and the ability to pick which opportunities you want to pursue. So now you get to use discretion with, how do I want to shape my life? How do I want to move forward? And it's a very empowering and beautiful place to be. So the eagle is here to tell you that the inner work may be really hard for you, um, for the multitude of reasons we talked about. But as you start to do that inner work to when you feel like you've completed it for this phase of growth in your life, you're going to see more and more opportunities, and you're going to rise above more and more of your obstacles until you enter this next phase of your life where you're empowered to do whatever it is you want to do. And anything in your way, you're going to rise above or easily clear, like we saw with that strength card. And you're going to get a massive amount of support for doing this from the world around you. Just like the eagle is able to fly because the wind and the mass that is in the air supports them to do so. So the second significant message this card has for you is asking about how you feel right now. It's calling you to self assess on what specifically feels like it's trapping you, and assessing what your sense of purpose is, and if you have one, and what motivating factors you have, and what you wish your motivating factors were, and what they would be in your ideal life. And it's asking you to really self assess what you want to make of your life and how you want yourself to operate. And after you do so, the Eagle card is here to encourage you to embody the courage to try to start flying, to try to answer these difficult questions and start self assessing how you can reach these things. So, to give this a little bit more tangibility, let's say that part of what's going on is you feel um, exhausted because you give so much of your time away to people that in your life that are continually asking or demanding you for it. Some of them don't have detrimental intentions. Some of them just may not understand where you're coming from. They may not see fully how draining they are to you. And that can come from a place of innocence of, you know, someone in your family is constantly asking you, hey, can you run these errands after you get off work? Um, and after you do them, you always meet them with a smile. I'm like, I did it. Like, great to see you. Okay, bye. And so they might not have a complete understanding of what's going on just because to them it's not obvious the way that you look. And to them, they're not seeing it. Other people, on the other hand, might know that you're tired and they say, I don't care, do it. Like, um, so, discretion here. But regardless, let's say you're exhausted because so much of the time that you have for yourself you give away. um the eagle here is really asking you to self-assess, like, ideally, what would a good life look like for you? What's bothering you that you'd want to fix? And you'd say, well, I'd love to be less exhausted. And the eagle would then say, like, great, so how would you achieve that? And a good answer would be, I would have more time to myself, to sit down, to relax, to decompress, to sleep. um and so within the means that you have, if the eagle card then says, like, okay, well, how would you achieve that? You could say something along the lines of, I should give less of my time away. And so for people who the things they're asking them to do aren't as time sensitive as they say, as they claim, or it's not as big of a deal, or they can do it themselves, they're not. Like, those are times where it would be realistic for you to find room to tell them, I'm not going to do this for you right now. And they may push back, but you can always continue to tell them no. That is within your right. So there's an example. Everyone's case is different, but hopefully that gets, like, the vibe across. Okay, so for the warrior card here, the luminous warrior in the middle, he's looking pretty great. With the sweet circle on his forehead. So what this card is really talking about and trying to convey to you is the importance of focusing on your own power and your own wisdom and your own beauty. And those are all multifaceted words in this case. We're talking about inner and external. So you have inner and external beauty, you have inner and outer power, and your wisdom is both physical and metaphysical and emotional. Um, and if any part of you, like, rolled your eyes or had dialogue that said, like, yeah, whatever, and rejected that, that's a good signal of part of things you can start to work on with yourself. When we talked about that Nightingale card, that's a good place to start. Is seeing yourself in better lights. And just because external forces and people or internal dialogues with yourself don't agree with what I just said, doesn't mean that you have to believe them and you have to embody that. You can challenge yourself at any point in time. And it's healthy to do so because that's when you really learn who you are and who you want to be, as opposed to how you were conditioned to believe the world should be and how you should act, um, from people around you and opinions that have surrounded you for any significant point in time in your life. So this card is really about reminding you that you are all the things that you want to be and you have the capabilities to do all the things that you want to do. But the only thing that's standing in your way is this inner work that you're being called to do. And that's it. So it sounds simple because it can be simple, but sometimes the simplest things are the most difficult things in our lives to achieve or complete. So be kind to yourself, um, but just know that you'll if you work on yourself and you see improvements in a way that makes you feel fulfilled and proud and happy and like you're loving yourself the way that you want to, you'll see a reflection in the world and it'll be exactly what you want it to be. So for the this pink card over here, the giveaway, or I guess on the camera it's peach. That's interesting. Um, for the giveaway, you're going to have two messages again. One of which is complimenting the warrior, and then the other will compliment the crow, and that's kind of where this advice will end. So for the giveaway, um, it's inviting you to make a list of things that you're grateful for. And it's asking you to practice gratitude, because the more you practice the feeling of gratitude, the more you'll be able to sit in that energy. And the longer you sit in that energy, the more powerfully you'll cultivate it for yourself. And you'll attract other life events, people, and thoughts within yourself, internal dialogue, that resonate on a similar frequency. So you'll find yourself in more situations where you would feel grateful for them. So this is another technique of something you can do even when the world around you is being very loud and kind of tumultuous and not necessarily what you want it to be. Um, and so this is more of a tangible way to practice being in a mindset and an energy that is positive to help support yourself and shape yourself the way you want it to be. Now, I know that there are some people who can be in really tough situations where they say, I don't have a lot to be grateful for. I don't feel that there's a lot in my life that I'm actually satisfied with or happy about. And it can be as simple as I'm grateful that my body works in a way that lets me function around the world. So I'm glad that I can pick things up and carry them. I'm glad that I can walk or traverse from point A to point B. I'm happy, like, I'm grateful I can actually work to make a paycheck, however little or much that paycheck may be. And like, I'm grateful that my lungs actually carry air and I can breathe easy. Or like, I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for my dogs. I'm grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for the water I get to drink every day and I can actually quench my thirst. I'm grateful I'm not starving to death. Like, they can be very basic things that you are grateful for if you need to build your way up. Um, and later you'll find more things to be grateful for, because what's going to happen is, for those of you who are called to work on this, you'll start to sit in that gratitude long enough to where you'll realize you'll see other things that you're grateful for. So it's sort of a similar pattern of thinking as when you say, like, everything in my life sucks, and then something else goes wrong and you say, oh look, another thing I'm not happy about, another thing that sucks, another problem. You can start doing that with practicing gratitude. You'll say, like, I'm grateful for this and that, the other thing. And then one day you'll go, oh, I'm also grateful for this. So, like, I'm also grateful that I have a comfortable bed to sleep in. And now I'm grateful that, like, the weather is great. And now I'm grateful that, like, I just got a raise, or I made a new friend, or I had a good conversation, or I didn't have to sit next to someone who smells weird on the bus. Like, you'll find other reasons and they'll just start popping into your head. And that's how you know you're starting to cultivate and sit in that energy um, more often. And you're starting to do it by yourself and just picking up on it. Okay. So the other message the giveaway card has for you is really interesting. I'm actually going to read it to you. It's the one labeled the medicine down here, because the synchronicities in this are wild, and I'm pretty impressed. So it says, it starts with a question. It says, is it difficult to set limits on how much of yourself you give. If you give more than is healthy, then you will not be able to give for long. You'll feel resentful with your partner or associates, or you'll feel like the world owes you something in return. And I want to pause there because that's a really heavy energy. And I think that's pulling back to the Seven of Swords, where we said there's this feeling of deceit and distrust, and sometimes it feels like maybe the world isn't on your side. And I want to take a moment and um, tell the people in this pile that if they feel that way, I really, really do feel for you. Because we've all been there and it can be really traumatic. And it's so, so hard to function every day when you feel like the world's against you and life no longer has anything to offer you. And if you're in an energy that's that thick and that heavy, I want you to know that you're not alone. Um, and there are people that can help you and want to support you. And my heart goes out to you, and a couple tears as well. So, there you go. Just know that you can be your biggest advocate, and if you need to go find people out there to talk to, um, you will run into them, as long as you're looking for them in a healthy way, not like a desperate latch onto any one way, but just you're open to finding a new friend. They'll come around. Okay. Um, and I think it's also hopefully comforting in some way to know you're not alone, because this is a general reading, so this reading does not just apply to you, and even I've been there. So the rest of the quote in this book says, notice if you give for any reason other than pure generosity. Like, are you trying to be liked or accepted? And are you hoping to heal an old wound? And I think that that is really powerful, because um, giving more than you have because you're worried about being viewed in a positive light or gaining favor or having people like you, all of those are, even though it's an act of kindness, it's not coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of fear and anxiety. And that tells you a lot of how you can work on yourself and grow and learn and develop from this and show yourself love. Is saying no would be the act of love, not the giving. And if this is stemming from a place of social anxiety, like what if they don't like me? What if I get rejected? What if they get angry? What if they won't do something nice for me later? All of that is a signal of this root cause of what you can work on. So you can start to favor yourself in a way to where you give yourself enough love and you view yourself positively enough to where when someone else judges you and decides that they don't like you, it doesn't become a traumatic, damaging experience. You just say, okay, well, if you don't like me, then we're not meant to spend a lot of time together. We're not meant to be in our lives long term, and that's okay. Like, I'll leave space in my life for people who are meant to be here long term, and I'll leave space for people who do enjoy my company. Um, and I think you should also be asking, if this is a point you're in, of I spent so much time worrying about if other people like me. Do I even like them? Do do I even care if they like me? Should I care if they like me? Because chances are a lot of these people that are taking advantage of you, when you really look at them, you'll say, I don't like them. I think someone who has stipulations on friendships, like, I only like you if you do all my chores, I only like you if you do me favors, I only want to hang out with you if you bought me something, um those are the people that, like, they're just gross to be around, like, I personally don't like being around people that do that. And maybe you do, maybe they're your type of people, but if they're not, then say, like, no, like, I don't need to make room in my life for them, and to whatever extent I can remove them, that I'm comfortable with and able to do so, like I'm going to do that. Um, okay, the last quote in this book from this message is start giving to yourself first and foremost. Offer yourself the care, the love, the time, and the acceptance that you are longing for. Once you experience plenty, then you can truly give to others. The very immature side of your shadow wants to say, like, I told you so. um, Not to rub it into you, but just to point out, like, how much this message has been repeating through the whole video. So, something for me personally is when I channel things like your shadow or your spirit guides, they don't have a way to emphasize things necessarily. Because the volume at which I hear them in my head sometimes doesn't equate to how much they're emphasizing the thing. So for them, repeating the message multiple times or me telling you the same thing more than once in a video through different cards or mediums is their way of like putting things in bold or italicized or underlined or all caps, that kind of a thing. So your shadow's kind of saying like, hey, you heard this message for like the, I don't know, fourth or fifth time. That's me trying to tell you how important it is and how healthy it is and how it's an act of love, not hate, to support yourself. Because you are your biggest advocate. And at the end of the day, you're kind of all you have. Like, if you stop giving to yourself, there's a really good chance that no one will give to you. But if you give to yourself, other people will understand you're someone worth giving to. So it's you kind of have to lead by example with your energy, because your energy will impact people in other ways that you won't see and you'll probably never be aware of. But I promise you, and your shadow promises you ultimately, if you do this kind of work, you'll find so many more people that are willing to give you acts of kindness instead of asking for you to overextend yourself. Like the scales will skew, and that'll be a clear sign that the work you're doing and have done for yourself to love yourself is paying off, and you're attracting loving energy instead of draining energies. So let's end with what the crow has to say. And so the crow's message to you is just one, and it says, be true to your word. Just like we saw with the nightingale, um, and a little bit the hawk. So, how you talk to yourself and what you say to others is going to be a very impactful tool that you have. So, you need to be really careful about talking to yourself kindly and supportively and with love and acceptance and patience. And you need to be really careful about what you say. So if you constantly say things like, the world's so cruel and I'm alone and no one understands me and no one wants to help me, you're going to perpetuate that status quo in your existence. Um, and I think it's really important to tell you, if you just sit there and say, everything's fine, it's all good, yep, no problems here, you know, all your problems will not be solved. This is not about toxic positivity or telling blatant lies to yourself, because you know what your truth is and what your lies are, and you will harbor distrust in yourself when you do stuff like that. But instead, you can say things like if you catch yourself saying like the world is cruel and nothing's right and everything in my life sucks, you can say, okay, hold on. I'm not happy with a lot of things here. The world is like, I see a lot of cruelty in the world right now, but um, but not everything is the worst. And I'm grateful for the little things that I do have. And um, and I am going to like I'm going to see a change in the direction I want. And until I see that change, I'm going to work on myself. So it's not about denying things and lying to yourself. It's about being realistic and knowing that part of that realism is having the capacity to change things for the better and being optimistic where it's appropriate and you should see that. Okay. So it says, Crow arrives just as we have convinced ourselves that what we are doing is right and justified. And while this may be the case in the realm of relative truth, in the higher realm of absolute truth, it is not. Look deeply into your heart and remain alert, lest you convince yourself of something that isn't deeply true of you, or perhaps it is not the highest truth. Do not seduce yourself with illusions. And this brings full circle what your shadow has been saying, in that there are other aspects of yourself that are out of balance and either misunderstood or not heard, that want to support you so you can be the best, healthiest, most loved version of you. And so the crow is really calling you to use your words as a wonderful tool. Just know it's a double edged sword, and understand that you are your most powerful advocate, and you are what is going to shape your future the way that you want it. And all of that can happen soon. It can happen this year and get you out of whatever situation you are unhappy with. So, the last few cards I have, and for those of you who are still here, like, dang, you are troopers, and thank you. Um, the last cards that I really have for you. You know what? I want to put up the reminder to, like, be kind to yourself and change your thinking cycles if that's something that you feel called to do. Now, the last ones I have, and you got 3, even though I think everyone else got like 2, so don't tell anybody. No favorites. But you are lucky. So I have these cards here for those of you who don't know how they work. Some of them have multiple stipulations. So land, animal, stars, sky, storm, sun. And then this one is power. I know my camera's being a little bit of a fussy boy today. So I pulled these cards with the intentions of asking what kind of energy work could benefit you and support you most in your journey this year. And I feel like that is especially relevant and important for you, who doing inner work is one of the best things you can do to really support yourself and the life that you're craving. So it's kind of convenient I asked for that, and uh, maybe that's why you're getting 3 cards instead of, you know, the 1 or 2 that the other piles have. So for the power card, here it is. It's the elephant. Let's see if we can get that to focus. There we go. For the power card, I'm gonna read it because, once again, I feel like I would be doing a disservice interpreting from it. I think this message is going to be really helpful for you, and it's multifaceted. I think that it's helpful when it's describing the power you have now to have internal dialogues with multiple parts of yourself as a multifaceted being. But I feel like this is also explaining to you some of the excitement and responsibilities you'll find yourself having when you do this work and you step into your real power as the peacock zebra of the century. So um, the power card ties into the theme of discernment, because the journey of power is all about learning to differentiate between false power and true power. True power serves what is best for others in order for them to adapt and evolve, expand, grow, and amplify. It is the ability to lift people up and show them what is possible. True power is vulnerable, open, and transparent. It supports that which makes a difference, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of many. And this is the part that I think is talking about after you realize your own power, you'll see this. When other people or institutions try to impose their will onto other beings or to enslave them, or infuse them with fear, lack, or division. That, my dear, is false power. And I think some of you have been struggling with false power right now, and you're going to break those chains. That is straight up misuse of power, and true power will not bow down to that shit. When this card appears in your spread, you know the spirits are offering insight into your personal journey in the realms of power and are inviting you to redefine your discernment accordingly. Now, your shadow wants you to know that when I said no, the spirits are offering you insight, it's mostly your shadow, or um, most excitedly and loudly your shadow. They are at this point in time your biggest advocate because they're all about putting yourself first and showing yourself the love and protection that you need. So don't be scared of them. Hopefully, and if you are, like, find someone, find a professional who can help you with this work in the best way possible. And even if you are scared of them, you can do this work without directly talking to them. They'll find another way to help you out. Okay, so if we move on to your second card with the bear and the star for the third eye, this is classified as land, animal, and then star. So this is a lot of grounding, nurturing, earth energy. That's what most of this card is defined as. And then it's complemented or nuanced by the essence of what really comes from animals. So, like, the primal instinctual energy that allows us to be a fulfilled being in this physical earthly realm. And then the star is more talking about like ethereal metaphysical energies. So there's a lot of grounding, primal, nurturing energy in this card, and that's nuanced by tying that into other things. So you want to lay your foundation of your spiritual work as you're doing some of this work with grounding energy and with nurturing and loving and understanding yourself and knowing that you're a physical being, and that's both powerful but not the full you. So as you do this ground work and learn how to love and support yourself, you'll see that the more metaphysical parts of you, the higher aspects of you, will benefit from it and further support you in a little bit of like a feedback loop. So if you have animals that you really like a favorite animal or a spirit animal, um, or as you do some of this work, you notice you have a lot of dreams about specific types of animals, or you just see more animals becoming larger, more significant parts of your life, or like you run into them more. Part of that is a sign that you're being supported on a very primal level by the earth, and it's encouraging you to understand that you yourself also have primal instincts and impulses, and some of those instinctual or intuitive things that you feel at certain points in time can be kind of doors that allow you to see a room that is filled with ideals that you've either locked away and pushed down and hidden, or that you should explore further because you'll learn a lot about yourself. So, if you do something nice for somebody because you're scared that they will in turn be mean, so like as they ask you, hey, can you do this for me? You're just like, yeah. And it's more of like a knee jerk reaction than anything else. Or you just don't question anymore saying yes, that can be an invitation to instead look at like, why am I jumping to serving them so quickly? Or maybe you say yes, or you do something for somebody else and it just makes you angry and you have no idea why. Like maybe at your work now, every time your boss says, hey, go do this, and it's a routine part of your job, like it really shouldn't, you view it as it shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be a problem because, like, regardless of who your boss was, you would be expected to go do this thing just because it's part of your job description in like the contract you signed to trade your time for money. Um, But for some reason, every time your boss asks you to do that one thing, you just get like livid, like just start seeing red. That can be a sign that there's an interaction between you and this other individual that is violating some kind of truth you hold within yourself. And it could be disrespect, like maybe the way your boss goes about asking or telling you or demanding that you do this one thing um, is very disrespectful, and asking you to do this thing or telling you to do this thing has now turned into a pattern of disrespect, and that's why you get angry. So that can be an opportunity for you to unpack, why do I see it as disrespectful, and how can I make sure that in my personal relationships I don't allow people to get away with this, and I will no longer talk to myself this way. And even though I'll do what the boss says because I need this work and I need this job, I'm not in a position where I can change jobs or quit yet. I will understand that them disrespecting me does not change how I value myself. And this situation is temporary. And I won't let their disrespect be mirrored within my internal dialogue and how I view myself. Um, so, this card is a lot about exploring and unpacking these more knee jerk reactions to things you have that maybe you're not noticing or just isn't getting acknowledged, that could help you see a lot of things that you haven't seen before. So, your last card is classified as heavily sky orientated, and then incorporating storm and finally sun aspects. So we're talking about kind of the opposite, really, in a lot of ways, as this land bear card here, where instead of starting with mostly grounded energy and complementing that with primal energy, this one starts off with a lot of ethereal, metaphysical, up in the air types of heady energy. Um, and that's translated into some really powerful manifestations of what we think about with storms. So, usually something explosive, and it can be very damaging, but it's always incredibly impactful. And kind of rounded out by the sun, which is a lot of like light energy and a lot of like I don't want to say warmth because I don't want to limit it to like physical things, but the sun, in terms of ethereal properties, is usually reflecting some of like your higher chakras and your light self, as opposed to like the shadow self. It also has a lot to do with love and being brave, and it can symbolize the need to not dim yourself because someone else is complaining you're too bright, when like it's not your fault they didn't bring their own damn sunglasses. And if staring at the sun is painful for them, then they can look somewhere else. They don't need to tell the sun to go somewhere else. Okay, so that's a lot of what this is, but this card specifically with this combination is talking about being courageous and braving challenges. And even though there can be chaos when you're the eye of the storm or near it, and there's chaos around you, navigating it is a courageous act, and doing so is something that you're being called to do. Um, and when possible, this is about navigating to dodge or not accept other people's misdirected energies that have left you depleted and exhausted. So again, we're seeing that theme of support yourself, but instead of grounding, now we're talking about working from the highest points of yourself and going down. So this is more of emotional and energetic maturity. So in this case, this card is saying you are tired and you are run down, and now it is time to replenish. So, doing light work may help you here. and trust that your light, so you yourself, even though you've been through a lot of trauma and turmoil and you may still be in the middle of chaos and tumultuous times, um, you can give yourself permission to heal and center, and ground yourself and understand that you're powerful enough to do all this even while your life is crazy and chaotic. You can always work on yourself and find ways to take care of your own energy and elevate yourself. You don't need anyone else's permission and you don't need anyone else's help, even though it can be beneficial. Like, you don't need it. Um, and that can be empowering. So, allow yourself, when you're feeling a good energy, to take a moment and embody it and appreciate it and understand what it feels like. And later, when you're meditating or before bed, whenever you have quiet moments, call that energy back to you and try to sit in it and just understand that it's okay to feel good and you're inviting good feelings into your life more often, even if your life as a whole doesn't feel good. And I think a lot of people try to do this subconsciously, where it translates a lot into escapism. And I'm not telling you to do escapism. I'm not an advocate for that because that's not healthy. But for example, if you're having like a really rough day, so you come home and you order in like your favorite food and you eat that while you watch like your favorite TV show, and you like eat your favorite like type of ice cream afterwards. Um, when the TV show's over and you're done eating, you still understand that by your definition, your life isn't where you want it to be. And you might describe it as, my life still sucks. But you had a lot of fun in that period of time where you were like enjoying and invested in and maybe laughing at this awesome TV show. And you really liked having a stress free moment of eating your favorite foods. Um, and so you already, in some ways, give yourself permission with this example to enjoy yourself, even if you're not happy with a lot of the major situations and occurrences within your life. And you can do that on like a spiritual level too, by just enjoying when you are happy or you're not feeling very upset for a moment. And you can call back those emotions at later points in time. And they may not always be there, or it may take time for you to start feeling better. Um, but the more you practice, like the more you practice gratitude, the more you'll find it's easier to calm yourself and recenter yourself and reject a lot of negative energy that's being imposed on you. And it is a skill and it can be hard in certain situations. So be patient with yourself. If there's times where you're like, I'm just not happy right now, that's okay. But what's not okay is being upset at yourself because you're not happy, or telling yourself like you're not going to be happy anymore. So, be patient, be understanding, be optimistically realistic as you move through this, because for some of you, you're going through some really hard stuff, and I feel for you. So, I wanted to end with a couple quotes from some books I have. I just feel like they're awesome, and it's really cool to end on an encouraging, good note. So the way I'm doing it is I have 4 books. So I'm gonna roll a die to pick which book, and then I'm gonna roll more dice to tell you like what page of what book we're reading from. Because for those of you who are still here, I love you and thank you. And I really hope you're still here because this actually helps in your journey, however you need it to. But we don't have time to read from every book. So you got book 1. That's the same as pile 1, I think. So book 1 is this book, Notes from the Universe, and we're going to figure out what page we're going to read from. So the way that I'm doing this is I'm gonna roll this d12, and that will tell us how many d20s we roll. The sum of those picks the page. And I'm explaining all of this because I want you to know if there are some massive synchronicities from whatever page we read. It was meant to be, I'm not just like picking stuff. Okay. So we have 8. So you got page 75. We're gonna go find that. I know we wanted page 75. I turned to 76, and this really stood out to me. So it says, whenever you'd like to know, you already know. Be still. We saw this with the Hanged Man. We saw this with the self-reflection. Your shadows talked a lot about how all the messages you need to do your personal growth you have, and you'll hear them as you start to put your attentions towards working on yourself and going within and hearing what yourself has to say and changing your internal dialogue. So I think that that is really important. Okay, so for 75, we have, let's zoom in here so you can see it as well. So it says, oh, it's not working? Well, do you know where you'd be right now? What your life would look like if it wasn't working? Not reading this, for one. About half as good looking as you are now, too. And perhaps wondering, in a strictly spiritual sense, who let the dogs out? The universe. P.S. It is working, and it's getting easier, and you are getting better and better and better. I also want to point out this page where it says Adventures Global Advisory. Staying the course should not be confused with clinging to the cursed. How? And I think lastly, what may be like helpful for you to remember as you do this growth is to understand that no one is going to be able to tell you what your spiritual growth is going to look like and how it's going to feel, how it will develop, how quickly it will develop on a personal level, because no one knows you the way that you know you. And anyone who says they do is an obvious liar. Obvious liar. Like, just, But what's very important to understand and remind yourself of is to be patient with your personal growth, because I realize when a message says, hey, if you just do this personal growth, your whole life will be the way that you want it to and it'll be perfect. That wasn't necessarily our message. That was an over exaggeration. But it also encourages a lot of impatience, because when dissatisfaction happens with your physical surroundings in a very dramatic, very intense way, you feel pressured to solve those issues so that you can feel better. And I just want you to understand, and your shadow wants you to understand from these messages, being patient with yourself is going to be a massive virtue here. And if at any point in time you feel like it's not working or it's not going fast enough, um, your shadow wants you to understand that it is working, and you'll see those changes in time. So your life will change for the better the way that it needs to when you're ready for that to happen, not a moment before or after. So even though you might feel upset at certain points during this personal growth that it's not happening quickly enough and you're not getting results as soon as you would like them, because I bet it would be yesterday, that's, even though it doesn't feel okay, it's okay. And um, even if things get stripped away from you because you feel like stuff isn't happening soon enough and negative things are occurring because you weren't able to, quote, fix your situation quickly enough, those things were stripped away from you. before things got better. For some of you, not all of you, I don't want to scare you, but if stuff does get stripped away from you or you lose things before stuff starts looking like it's getting better to you, um, and you just feel like that's more of the world being against you, it's not what's happening is a little bit of tough love where you can't understand it right now, but those things were taken away from you because after you heal, you wouldn't let go of them. That's why they feel like a loss. And you not letting go of them would either diminish your healing and you wouldn't heal as much, or you would very tragically and drastically fall backwards into a state that was more immature from where you're starting with this reading. So it would actually slingshot you backwards and you would have to learn all of these painful lessons again. And that would cause you to lose even more. So if things do get what seems like very unfairly stripped away from you, or you lose things that you were fighting not to lose, know that there's a reason for it. And um, a lot of like spirit guides and other things and higher parts of yourself included agreed and planned on those things leaving your life, temporary or otherwise, so that this healing has the most profound effect on your life. And if at a later point in time you decide you don't want those things lost to you, you will find a way to get those things back. So for example, if you have to move because where you are is not within your financial means, or you have to move for work because you can't find another job and they're the only ones that will transfer you and you're frustrated by that. If later in your life you say, I really liked the way that that house was, I want a similar place of living back, you will have the means to not only get a house that is similar to what you had, but better. It will have more space or a bigger yard or newer appliances, or you'll have the means to remodel it the way that you want to later. So be really, really patient for those of you where anything like that happens. And for those of you who don't lose anything, you just feel like, this isn't working, know that it is, but you can't always see all the ways that it's working because a lot of these effects are going to happen in higher frequencies that human minds generally can't interpret well. But physical means will happen after that as part of the cascade. So again, be patient and don't worry on the how. All right, that's all I have for you. I hope this helped, and I wish you all the best. My heart goes out to each and every one of you in pile two. Um, and for those of you who made it all the way through, thank you again for sticking with me because that was a lot. And I will see you in a brand new video.